Good morning, it is 7 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well. Lots to get to.
Teachers will be trained to spot early signs of misogyny in boys. It's part of the government's long-awaited strategy to tackle violence against women and girls.
Diminishing hopes of peace in Ukraine, Putin lashes out at European leaders, calling them little pigs, and says Russia will take the Donbass by force if necessary.
Mourners gather in Sydney for the funeral of Bondi Beach attack's youngest victim, Matilda.
Also today, we're speaking to superstar actor and rapper Riz Ahmed.
He's here to talk about Shakespeare, social injustice and his passion to make the world a fairer place.
A very good morning to you. The government will publish its long-awaited plans to crack down on violence against women and girls today. Changing attitudes among boys and young men is at the centre of the strategy. And there's a big focus on the classroom and teaching boys about misogyny.
Now, the government points to a statistic that over 40% of young men say they admire the controversial influencer Andrew Tate. Now, teachers are going to be trained to spot the early warning signs of misogyny in boys and also given some support to try and tackle those views head-on. Molly Malone reports.
So psychological abuse, economic abuse, tech abuse.
What teenagers are being taught is changing. At this school in North London, they're taking part in a workshop about healthy relationships.
What did I do now? You're such a flirt, and that just annoys me.
Role-playing scenarios to help them navigate life outside of the classroom.
You're always doing it, and it really annoys me.
We heard in the workshop phrases like toxic relationships, toxic masculinity. Does that sort of reflect what you're seeing online?
Yeah, of course. I feel like most people have experienced it, and it's not a good feeling, and it's good to learn how to deal with it.
Programmes like this are central to the government's new violence against women and girls strategy, with a requirement for secondary schools to start teaching them, as ministers look to focus on prevention, the attitudes of young boys, and challenging misogyny.
We know even if a young person isn't in an abusive relationship, they're experiencing peer pressure, or they're seeing things online, they're hearing things from, the manosphere, or they're hearing messages about toxic masculinity.
Halving violence against women and girls within a decade was a manifesto pledge. The strategy to get there has been highly anticipated and long delayed, but now comes with three core aims: to prevent with education to tackle the root causes of violence, to stop abusers by strengthening police tactics, and to better support victims within the criminal justice system.
It should never be allowed for you to hit your partner under any circumstances, no matter what.
The government have called violence against women and girls a national emergency. It is a message and a mission finding favour with celebrity endorsements. But there are concerns in the sector that a focus on prevention and education could see increased pressure on victim services that say they're struggling, with some shutting down. The incoming Victims Commissioner said, victim services are not an optional extra to this strategy. They must be the backbone of it. Without clear, sustainable investment and cross-government leadership, I'm concerned we run the risk of the strategy amounting to less than the sum of its parts, a wish list of tactical measures, rather than a bold, unifying strategic framework.
The violence against women and girls strategy does not sit in aspic. It is the beginning, not the end, and I have every confidence that it is the very best start towards that very ambitious target.
Every emotion in this room is valid.
A target to halve violence against women and girls in the next 10 years, with a new approach for changing times. But still, old questions remain about funding, resources, and the scale of the problem. Molly Malone, Sky News.
Well, let's bring in Amanda to talk about this, shall we? It's one of the central focuses of this government. They've described violence against women and girls as a national emergency. They've got this very, very ambitious target to halve it. It's not going to be easy to achieve that. What do you make of what they've said so far?
Well, yeah, this is something that successive governments have really grappled with and failed to make any inroads with. We've had 3 different strategies from the past three governments effectively since 2010 aimed at tackling this issue. It makes up 20% of all recorded crime. Of course, there's even more that goes unrecorded. It's a huge problem. Jess Phillips is coming in and promising that her strategy will be different, criticising the previous ones as a catalogue of failures. But even this strategy has been heavily delayed. It was meant to come out in the spring, then it was meant to be summer, then the autumn. Now here we are just before Christmas, which some campaigners have said, well, that in itself could lead to a loss of life because the stakes are clearly so high here. The government sort of say, well, they've had to bang heads together, that actually they want this to be a cross-government approach, different departments getting buy-in. That's something that previous strategies were really criticised for not doing. So that's why it's taken them kind of 18 months to come up with it. We know it's something that's important to them. Prime Minister's at the top of the press release saying we have a responsibility to future generations. And clearly it's something we've all been talking about so much. We all saw Adolescence, that TV show. Clearly it's something that kind of concerns about young boys and these messages around misogyny are only getting worse. So today we're getting the big announcement. We've had a kind of drip, drip, drip throughout the week of different kind of measures here and there. We're going to find the full details later on today.
The big announcement today is £20 million.
Exactly, it's not a huge amount of money. And in fact, actually only 16 million of that is coming from the government. The rest, they've sort of said, oh, we're going to get the rest from philanthropists and other charitable organisations. They have announced sort of additional funding, sort of there's other pots, 19 million, 50 million for additional housing support for people in refugees. There's money for sort of police investigators. There's additional NHS funding. But yeah, this is a big part of the criticism because the Domestic Abuse Commissioner has come out and said this doesn't go far enough. There isn't enough investment there to really make a difference.
Do I'm right in saying that we don't know the big announcement yet,
exactly.
Right? So this is, I think, is the kind of early kind of release, if you like. And I do think some of this is quite interesting, I'll be honest, because what the government is saying is that boys only are going to be taught in school about misogyny. And I think that, yeah, we always look at money and all this kind of thing in these situations and delays and stuff, but actually I think that is quite a controversial thing in itself. If you can imagine boys being pulled out of class, taught separately about misogyny, directed at boys in particular, I think there'll be some people who think that this is kind of demonising young boys, others saying that actually, if we are going to start looking at, in particular, this younger generation who perhaps are more influenced by what they're seeing online, then maybe this is the kind of thing that we've got to grapple with.
I think so. I mean, it's really interesting just seeing that kind of that workshop that was going on in Molly's report there, and also, I mean, I think it's a lot of things that are quite uncomfortable for people to talk about, especially perhaps parents with their children. Jess Phillips has been saying, you know, you need to talk about strangulation.
Yeah. No one wants to think about their son being a misogynist, right?
You know, and things that, you know, really young boys are seeing pornography at such a young age that this is something that perhaps parents not growing up with kind of, you know, the world in their pocket and mobile phones and the same thing, just is just a kind of whole different approach. And of course, we've talked about this again and again, but as you say, like for the government's strategy to be going to schools and really targeting boys in this way, it's, you know, is an interesting different approach.
Amanda, great stuff. Thank you. And really looking forward to Sophie's conversation with Jess Phillips coming up shortly. Also the Children's Commissioner later as well. And I do think that aspect of online influence is just so central to all of this, and we'll be exploring that with them both to come. To the war in Ukraine now, and EU leaders are holding further talks today ahead of a crunch decision on loaning tens of billions of euros in frozen Russian assets to Ukraine.
So officials in the US have talked up progress towards ending the war, but look, there hasn't been much detail on how that key issue of Ukraine's sovereignty would be resolved, and the language coming out of the Kremlin is not exactly encouraging either. Vladimir Putin has rejected any compromises. And to give you a bit of a sense about, you know, where this is going, he's also called European leaders little pigs. While our Europe correspondent Alison Bunkle is in Brussels, where that meeting will take place later this morning. Ali, how optimistic are you feeling?
Well, this has been described as the most significant European Council since the COVID pandemic. Let me give you some of the context around why. If we go back to 2022, when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the EU and other Western allies like the UK seized, froze Russian assets, billions of pounds worth, and about 210 billion are sort of under the control of EU institutions or organisations in the EU. Most of that money is under the control of something called Euroclear, a clearinghouse that's based here in Brussels. Now, the EU's always been a bit squeamish about using that money to help Ukraine, worried that it would damage its financial credibility around the world. But it's come to a crunch point now where Ukraine potentially faces bankruptcy early next year, which means it wouldn't be able to pay its soldiers, policemen, civil servants, for example. It just wouldn't be able to continue fighting the war against Russia. And so it needs funding desperately. It can't rely on the United States anymore, because we've seen how Donald Trump continued to change his mind in terms of his approach to Ukraine. And so the EU wants to free up a lot of that money to be able to give to Ukraine to fund Ukraine's war for the next couple of years. But there is a sticking point, there's a fly in the ointment, and that is Belgium, the country where the EU is based, but the government of Belgium, because most of the money is being held here in Belgium, don't want to pass it to Ukraine because they fear a backlash by Russia, perhaps being taken to the courts, being on the hook for that money in the future, which would cripple their economy. And so the leaders are coming here today to try and see whether they can get a breakthrough. Germany's Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, who is kind of like leading the campaign really, said that if they fail today, it could take the credibility of Europe years to recover from. If they are successful and they do find an agreement and they do get that money to Ukraine, well, not only will it allow Ukraine to continue fighting, it will really give the EU certainly a stronger hand in negotiations if they are largely funding Ukraine. It will be a strong message to Vladimir Putin that Europe is united, not divided. And it will be a pretty strong message to Donald Trump as well, who's been utterly disparaging of Europe in recent days and weeks, that actually Europe does have some teeth. So there is a lot riding on today.
Ali, just on that, I mean, it is expected to be approved that Ukraine can use this money, isn't it?
No, I really think it's in the balance. Now, how much of that is politics? You know, as the ambassadors, the EU ambassadors have been meeting over recent days to try and find a breakthrough, or how much of it, you know, is genuine reluctance from Belgium? It's not just Belgium alone, I should say. You know, they are supported somewhat by Giorgia Meloni, the Italian leader, but also, as you'd expect, Viktor Orban, the Hungarian president as well, who's very pro-Kremlin. But Belgium are the sticking point, and what the EU needs to do is try and find a way to bring Belgium on side. Now, they could pass a vote by qualified majority, which would bypass Belgium and get it through. But there are diplomatic consequences, there would be diplomatic fallout if they did that. I think this could go into a second day. Most leaders have been told to be warned that it could go into a second day if that's what it takes. But the feeling is that there does need to be a decision at this meeting, whether it's today or tomorrow. They can't just kick this into the long grass.
Ali, great stuff as always. Thanks so much. Good to see you.
Let's go to Sydney now, where the friends and family of the Bondi shooting's youngest victim, little Matilda, have said their final goodbye at her funeral.
The New South Wales Premier, Chris Minns, was also there and read a poem in her honour.
From darkness they struck to where candles glowed bright. A child of celebration was lost to terror's night. Yet in the hush of sorrow, her memory will shine, a beacon of her love, though her earthly light has gone. She bore the name Matilda to honour this great land, Australia's heart and spirit, forever hand in hand. Now angels gather softly, their wings a silken shroud, and heaven holds her closely far above the cloud. Her spirit, like a swagman's, will never fade away. She's waltzing with the angels, where love will always stay. Though sorrow fills the campfire and tears the night have found, Matilda's name now honoured in every sacred ground.
Nicole Johnson's in Sydney for us. It's so difficult to know what to say after that, to be honest. It's just so moving, particularly, I think, around the name Matilda and what that now comes to symbolise.
That's right. This young girl, 10 years of age, has captured the hearts of Australians, and part of it is her young age and the name. And we just heard about that name. Matilda has a lot of resonance here in Australia. There's a song called Waltzing Matilda. It's almost an old, unofficial anthem in Australia. The women's football team here is called the Matildas. So it does mean a lot to Australians. And the story of this young girl, her parents were from Ukraine. They decided they wanted to name her Matilda to give her a traditional, real, hearty Australian name. So a heartbreaking story, and her funeral was held today. Sky News was there, and they spoke to somebody from Bondi. His name is Angelo Economou.
The unity within the hall in there was just, it was just amazing. Amazing. I've gone to a lot of funerals, as I said, but this was just, you know, especially being a child. That's the biggest thing, and, you know, sometimes I'm a protector of children. And I feel somehow I've failed.
Nicole, the emotion from that gentleman clear to see, and you know, watching Matilda's funeral, but the coverage of other funerals that have obviously happened in the last couple of days has been so emotional for everyone to watch. Is that tone spread across the whole country still? Sum up how the nation is feeling this Thursday, four and a half days on?
I think the country is still in shock. I mean, this is something that doesn't happen in Australia. As we know, it's considered one of the safest countries in the world, really. It has strict gun control laws, and it has had for 30 years. So for an attack of this nature at such an iconic site like Bondi Beach, so methodical, so systematic and well planned, you can see just behind me that the pedestrian bridge that was used by the gunman is now open. So there is a sense that life is trying to return to normal. The beach is open again. This is no longer a crime scene. The various governments are talking about changing gun control laws, stricter anti-Semitism laws. So there is a sense of trying to move on from it. But yes, the country is still in deep shock.
Nicole, thank you very much indeed. Nicole Johnson there reporting to us from Sydney. We've been talking this morning, of course, about the government strategy to tackle violence against women and girls, a long-awaited strategy. And joining us this morning is the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips. Now, I know you've got more to announce later, but there is a bit that we've got this morning as well. And before we start talking about the solution, I just wanted to talk about the scale of the problem first. You know, how big an issue is misogyny?
I mean, look, violence against women and girls in our country, there's many different harrowing statistics that you could pull from. 1 in 8 women last year, 1 in 8. We can all imagine being in a room with eight women, can't we? Very frequently. Well, one of those women in the last year will have suffered some form of violence. And violence against women and girls, men's violence, doesn't happen in a vacuum. It starts somewhere and it builds up. You don't start with murder. It goes on a continuum, and so it is a huge and growing issue.
I'm interested when you say it's a huge and growing issue, because it does feel that, like, you know, if you look at your kind of father's generation, your grandfather's generation, and your husband's generation, it felt like there was a kind of progression.
Progress, yeah.
If that makes sense.
Step towards progress, yeah.
And it feels that actually, with the younger generation, perhaps because of the influence of what's happening online, is going the other way.
Look, the data suggests that absolutely. So if I look across every crime type in violence against women and girls, the age of perpetration is falling and victimisation. So both younger people are 40% of young people are controlling behaviours within their own relationships. So that maybe we talk about it more. I think that there is an element of not, you know, let's not be so scared of what and many young people that they have massively progressed in lots of areas. I don't wish to say they're a doomed generation or anything. As the mother of this generation as well, exactly. Not all of them, but you know, I'm responsible for 2 men in this generation. I don't want to say that they're doomed, but look, the data it is worrying.
And you talked there about the kind of different scales of misogyny, like people don't go straight to murder. What kind of misogynistic behaviour are we actually seeing? You know,
so look, the government and what it is announcing around what we will try and do to intervene has come almost directly from teachers and young people themselves. So if you go and speak to any school in the country, the young girls will tell you the kind of behaviours that they're having to tolerate at school. And you might remember the sort of bra strap flicking and things. It's more than that. It is ideas about what women, how they should behave. It is the sharing of naked images. It is misogynistic attitudes towards teachers. And what teachers have told us is that they need the resources and schemes to refer children into to try and stop that behaviour from happening in the first place. And so that's what the government will do.
And this is what you're doing. You've got like kind of misogyny lessons, I guess, for boys at school. Is that
well, look, for all children in school, we will provide healthy relationship education for all children, and that is part of the curriculum that has been updated. That's boys and girls talking about what good looks like, what consent looks like. But what we need to do is make sure that where there are difficult behaviours being shown, that there are targeted interventions, as there would be if my children were showing extremist behaviours in school. There are schemes that people can be sent on, but that doesn't exist for this. So if a young man was showing, had been found to have been sharing images, indecent images, as a mother of sons, what I would want is for the school to have a referral place, a specialist service that they could bring in for a child to stop that progressing.
And just lay out, so that's what you're bringing in today, this kind of specialist service, and then also these kind of ideas that boys are going to be taught about misogyny as well.
Yeah.
Can I just, with my kind of sceptical journalist hat on...
You could be sceptical.
If you're a 13-year-old boy...
Yeah.
And you like Andrew Tate, you admire him, you get Tommy Robinson videos in all of your social media feeds. The last people you're going to listen to is schools and teachers. I mean, if you want to get real on this stuff, don't you need to ban social media for under 16s?
I mean, the first thing I'd say is that what the government is announcing today will be evidence-based. We will.
Seems that what I'm trying to say,
and it will be done by specialists. I absolutely agree with you. All the evidence suggests that actually, while teachers play a massive and important role, that actually with that external partners delivering this stuff is really vitally important, whether that's youth workers, whether that's specialists in violence against women and girls. So I don't disagree with you, and that is actually what we are announcing. But you're absolutely right that the issue of like what our children see online, and I have to say, I think that there are some reasons to be cheerful. In July, the age verification of pornography was brought in, and Pornhub has seen a 77% reduction in its traffic. That's a good thing.
It seems that this government talks a good game on violence against women and girls, but you're a little bit nervous when it comes to some of these really, really big levers, like what we've seen in Australia, banning social media for under 16s, for example. Like, even banning phones in schools, you're not doing that.
I mean, it's the first time anyone's ever described me as nervous, so I shall take that. Look,
the government as a whole, I think a lot of people describe it as nervous for a lot of different things.
We will look at what is happening in Australia and absolutely take whatever from the world where the best practice is. It is very, very new what is happening in Australia. And what I would say is that later in the statement, you will see that the violence against women and girls strategy is absolutely not nervous in trying to tackle the online issue, because women, girls, boys, everybody lives their lives half online, and not tackling that would not work.
Can we talk about grooming gangs? Because like, what happened to those girls, for many people, for most people probably, is like the worst possible example of misogyny. From the perpetrators, but also the organisations that they were supposed to turn to, and end up being blamed themselves in some of these cases. So no wonder they don't trust authority. But then you appoint like a Labour peer to head up the inquiry. I mean, you can see why some victims feel that this government dragged its feet having an inquiry in the first place, and now they've appointed one of their mates to head it up.
Anne Longfield has dedicated her life to supporting and advocating for children and holding to account, more importantly, institutions that failed to do that. And for that, she was, by David Cameron, not a famous member of the Labour Party, David Cameron, appointed to be the Children's Commissioner for the United Kingdom. She has worked under any government of any stripe, councils of different stripes to improve their children's services. And I have to say, I have every faith that without fear or favour, she will absolutely hold people to account, and not just her, the other people on the panel. So that Zoe Billingham has a long career of holding the police to account, and Eleanor Kelly has a long career of making sure that local authorities are held to account.
It is difficult for these women, though, these victims, because they feel let down again and again and again, and they feel that you were reluctant to do it in the first place. Fiona Goddard, for example, a survivor of abuse, someone you know, obviously, she's calling on you to resign. She said that you called her a liar because she said her claims the government was trying to water down the inquiry were categorically untrue.
I'd just like to say, I never once called Fiona Goddard a liar. Look, I have to listen to the voices of victims, and just I think it is really quite important to say that Anne Longfield has been meeting with the victims of grooming gangs over the last week since her appointment, and we have to make sure that we don't say that all victims have the same views. And actually, I've spoken to victims who had met with her who were incredibly pleased with her appointment and felt very confident in both her and the other panel members. So I think that we must make sure that those voices are also heard on the record. And what I would say is I have to listen to a huge range of people, and any criticism that comes my way, I take that absolutely on board. And what we will do is we will roll out a laser-focused grooming gang inquiry that will also, alongside it, Operation Beaconport, which is the policing element of this, handing over criminals to criminal charges, and those two systems will work together. Look, the proof of the pudding will always be in the eating, and I think we have the best people to do that.
There's just one other thing I wanted to ask you about. This is the difficulty whenever you kind of sit in this chair, that there are so many issues on violence against women that I want to talk about. And you know, we've been talking about misogyny, and at its very worst, misogyny leads to rape, right?
Or murder.
Or murder, yeah, and sometimes both. In my kind of 20 years as a journalist, one of the things that I am most appalled by is, you know, the trauma that rape victims have to go through getting justice.
Absolutely.
And I just want to ask, because we've got these jury reforms going through at the minute, right? You're saying that you have to scrap jury trials for some cases because of the backlog. Should you have considered scrapping jury trials for rape? Because there are some people who say that because of misogyny in society and the trauma of the victims, there is a case that actually that's the one crime that maybe you should not have in front of a jury.
Well, look, I think that first thing I'd say is that the reforms that we're trying to make to our Crown Court backlog is because that we are cruising towards a backlog of just 1,000 cases sitting in the backlog. And the people who that is the absolute worst for is rape victims who, you know, I've met children who were raped and they didn't see the inside of a courtroom until they were then adults, coming forward at the age of 13 and don't see in the inside of a courtroom until they're 21. That is why we have got to have a large-scale focus on how we bring that down. And this is genuinely what I don't understand. Why isn't rape being part of the conversation? For the reasons that you mentioned, but also because there is some people have been arguing that it should be for a long time. Look, there are various different models that have been floated. Look, I actually am sort of, I don't have a very firm personal opinion, and what the government will do with regard to how victims are dealt with at rape trials, and bear in mind that we have a Prime Minister who is somewhat of an expert in this and has sought to change things along the way, and the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy that will be released today has quite a lot of things about how we improve the court system, and things like the myths and stereotypes which lead to juries being not so favoured in cases of rape trials. But there is no reform that we won't look at to try and improve things for victims of rape. But at the moment, I have to say, there is not the clamour for there to be not jury trials for rape. That is not something I am hearing from the sector. It is not. It is that we need to improve the system and speed up the system that we have.
OK, thanks very much indeed. Jess Phillips speaking to us there on the government strategy for violence against women and girls. We'll be hearing more about that, of course, when it is fully announced later on. Me and Will will be back in just a few short moments' time.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Ridge and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Welcome back. Our next guest is a true migrant success story. Aged 11, he arrived in the UK after his father had fled from what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo. He spoke no English, but made his home in East London and went on to become a top Premier League footballer.
Not bad, I have to say. Not a bad story at all. He played for Arsenal, Birmingham City and Bolton, and he's joining us on what is International Migrants Day. It's part of a campaign trying to change the narrative on migration.
We are joined, we're delighted to say, by Fabrice Muamba. Very good morning to you, Fabrice. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
Can we, if you don't mind, just start on your story, expand a bit for us on the intro we just mentioned. So you arrived here aged 11. You didn't speak much English. I mean, at that point, how nerve-wracking was it? Was it worse than that? Did you have high hopes for your future here?
No, I didn't have many high hopes for my future. I think the biggest thing was my language barrier. But as a young man, you try to integrate and try, involve in many activities you can, especially school, being English being probably the third language. I've from coming from a country that speaks French, so being able to learn the language was the biggest hurdle. But as time goes on, you're able to adapt and you're able to learn the language and to make friends, and from there it escalated to what it is now.
I mean, you've had the most incredible journey, I have to say. I mean, Wilf's an Arsenal fan, obviously Shane, you ended up at Arsenal, but other than that, it really is completely extraordinary. I'm interested in how you found the UK growing up. Did you find it a welcoming country? Did you find it a racist country? And do you think that's changed?
No, I mean, for me, I can only speak on my experience. The UK has always been welcome to me. So from the moment I stepped foot in this country, everybody's been open arm to me, and then made me feel involved in every activity, in every opportunity that was presented in front of me. There was never been a feeling of racism, anything, anywhere, shape or form. And I think that's why this campaign is so important to me, because you have to show that the importance of global displacement. You know, there's a greater issue out there where a lot of people move from their home country to come to a place where they feel wanted, they feel need, they feel safe. And I feel when we spoke about this idea about this campaign, I felt I had to raise my voice as well.
Do you think that is still the overriding opinion of most people today as well, or not?
I mean, this is not a political movement. I feel like we're going through a transition period where not just here, but in everywhere around the world. And I feel like migration are always been looked at as people who are coming to a country to take away what has been what's not belong to them. But the greatest story is that 93% of people that underestimate what belonging mean. 95% people in the UK that do underestimate what it's like to live away from home and try to better your life. And I think, and once people start to get educated about being immigration and why people coming from different countries to better their life, everybody will have a better understanding with it.
I think that's really interesting, that word that you just used about how people see immigrants and migrants as people who come to take something away from the country. When I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're trying to do is to show the contribution that people make, that they bring something as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about being adding something, and also for the person that come in, they want to feel like their sense of belonging. And I am an advocate of that, because I feel like the country's open arm for me. They gave me this opportunity, and I felt I belong to it. So for me, it's important to highlight why that we have to understand and educate people about immigration. It's the easiest way to highlight the negative side of it, but the positive side of it is that the immigrant people that come from different countries add something, and then also can learn something from people that live within the UK.
Do you have any kind of closing thoughts or messages of advice to people who may struggle to take that positive outlook on all of this?
I mean, it's simple. Everyone deserves dignity and safety and sense of belonging. We live in a society where a lot of things happen, and we live in the past 2 years. A lot of things become so front forward in terms of racism and discrimination. And I think having a sense of belonging and making sure that you can appreciate people's culture and people learn about other people's history can help only to benefit the importance of understanding somebody that moved from another country to this country.
It's been lovely to talk to you, and we're interested to see, of course, this kind of tree of belonging, this festive installation that we're going to have. I do have one last question for you, though. Do you think Arsenal are going to win the league?
I think you have to speak to Mikel about that. I think you have to, if you ask him, he will take one game at a time.
I share that view, by the way. I share that view. It's a long way to go.
You're not playing now. You can say what you really think. One game at a time is what you'd say at that post-match interview, isn't it? I can hear it. What do you reckon? Go on.
Listen, I said to me, I'll just stand by one game at a time. And I think it's
very sensible. Very like it a lot.
Arsene Wenger trained you well in that post-match interview. Stick to the script. We appreciate it. Fabrice, a real pleasure to have you on.
No, thank you for having me.
What do you think, Wilf?
I told you it was going to get closer, as it has already. I'm nervous, but quietly optimistic.
One game at a time.
One game at a time. Oh, there we go. You wanted me to say that. I get it.
No, I'll say it. I don't mind. That's good.
Right, let's talk now about weight loss injections. We've all heard of them, of course, now. We may even know people who are using them.
Well, this year in particular has seen the male market for the jabs absolutely skyrocket. Previously, it was by far more women buying it than men. 90% of women, 90 to 10%, not 90% women, that really would be a news story. 90% to 10% on the split of who's buying weight loss jabs. That's now shifted to 60% women, 40% men.
For more on this, let's speak to James O'Lone. He's the Chief Executive of Chemist for You. James, thanks so much for joining us. Can I just check those statistics, first of all? Is that for people who are choosing to have them as opposed to those that are being given them, prescribed them by doctors for health reasons, or does it kind of include all of the above?
For our data, certainly, it's people who are self-funding, so out of pocket, and using the injections through their own method by using a service like ourselves or others.
And what's your take on these weight loss jabs? Because look, there are some people who would say that this is an incredible part of medicine that is helping people to get much healthier very, very quickly. Others say, actually, there is concern about body image. How safe are they? What are the side effects? What's your view on this? Given, of course, full disclosure on the company you work for as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've always been advocates, big supporters of these as a powerful tool in the arsenal. I think you only have to look at the challenge we have ahead of us in terms of the obesity crisis. In terms of safety, comparatively to other drugs that are on the market that we would see typically day to day in the NHS, there's no significant uplift in like side effect profile or significant dangers from our perspective. And I think you have to look at the positive outcomes that people are already seeing, whether it's self-funding or whether it's using it through that NHS criteria. The outcomes for comorbidities like cardiovascular disease, for type 2 diabetes, they're so impactful, and I think we're only really seeing the start of that impact. And in years to come, we'll hopefully really see the benefits longer term.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but presumably most of the people you're selling this to are doing so because they've chosen to themselves, thus at least perhaps in part for not superficial reasons per se, but not medically prescribed reasons by a doctor. Is it still the case that there are shortages of the supplies for these drugs, and should that be something that's considered a little bit more in the early years where these are available, if there's not enough supply for the NHS, for example?
So no, I mean, at the very inception of the release of some of the medications, there were well-documented supply chain issues, which haven't been seen for a long period now. So the supply has been really, really stable. And to your point about the sort of leaking over into the aesthetic approach rather than the health approach, I think it really very much depends on the provider that you choose to have your consultation with, and whether that provider is looking at things like your NHS medical record to make sure that the provision is safe for you. There's no doubt there has been a black market, well-documented black market that has erupted, and it has made its way into the aesthetics industry. But the reality is these are a prescribed medication that are for a health benefit and should remain as such through their life cycle.
Can I ask you about the gender split here? Because I'll be honest, it is really, really stark. Why do you think it is that so many more men are now, using these weight loss jabs? And is it just that we've seen more people using them generally, like women have gone up too, but men have just gone up faster?
I think there's been a huge uplift in men specifically, partly due to awareness. So things like social media, the traditional media talking so widely about it. I think it's hard to shy away from the health benefits too. It's hard to not see the impact that it can have. And a lot of word of mouth, I think, is hugely powerful for a lot of these treatments. And anecdotally, I would travel a lot for work, and I've been in taxis where taxi drivers tell me that they're in a men's support group with over 1,000 people in it that share like stories, meal plans, and they're all on the weight loss treatments, which anecdotally is just like really, really interesting indicator, that it's becoming so established on the male side of the market.
James, thanks so much for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
James O'Lone there from Chemist for You. Well, after the break, we're going to be talking to Anne McElvoy, our good friend, co-host, of course, of Politics at Sam & Anne's and executive editor at Politico, building up to that all-important meeting in Brussels today of EU leaders. We'll be right back.
data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparency in journalism. We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories. Sky News has been given exclusive data. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in. Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok. We've been undercover inside Asia's huge network of scam centres.
This compound is, without a doubt, the worst. It is essentially hell on earth.
We cover a vast, varied and dynamic region that's shaping the rest of the world.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
US President Donald Trump addressed the nation last night and looked back at his year in office since stepping into the White House in January. It follows voter backlash on the economy that's dragged down Trump's approval ratings. He blames Joe Biden for that. The leader insisted things will only get better from here. Let's have a listen back to some of the things he said overnight.
We are making America great again. Tonight, after 11 months, our border is secure. Inflation is stopped. Wages are up. Prices are down. Our nation is strong. America is respected. And our country is back, stronger than ever before. We're poised for an economic boom, the likes of which the world has never seen. Soon we will host the World Cup and the Olympics, both of which I got. But most importantly, we will celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. There could be no more fitting tribute to this epic milestone than to complete the comeback of America that began just 1 year ago. When the world looks at us next year, let them see a nation that is loyal to its citizens, faithful to its workers, confident to its identity, certain to its destiny, and the envy of the entire globe. We are respected again like we have never been respected before.
Well, our correspondent Mark Stone has been digging into the speech. This is his report.
I think this was a fascinating speech, not for what he announced, because there really wasn't
anything in there. It was interesting because of his tone. The speech was a sort of greatest hits, his framing of the past year, but the tone was angry. It was frustrated. The vibe was kind of like, why are my polling numbers not better? Why is the economy not doing better? Why are you, the voters, not feeling better off? That seemed to be the subtext. And remember, it is his low polling, rising unemployment, the cost of living and inflation challenges which prompted this address in the first place. His team have been telling him to talk about the economy, to show that he's got or getting a handle on it. Had he come out and in a sort of off-script, natural way with empathy said, look, I get it. It's taking time for you to feel my economic success. If he'd said that with meaning, then I think this would have landed in a more sympathetic way. Instead, reading off a script, unusual, he came across as a kind of angry, frustrated president and extremely defensive as well. For a man who can deliver a message and who can perform, it was uncharacteristically bad. And here's the worry for Team Trump. So often out and about with voters, I hear people say, look, I don't really like his style, I don't like his language, his divisiveness, but he's a businessman. He knows how to run the country and he knows how to run the economy. If he loses those people, then he's in real trouble. And one last thought, there are obviously observers who think he's kind of unhinged, losing his marbles. I do think that the slightly strange tone of this speech will be evidence for them of that.
Mark Stone there for us in Washington overnight. Delighted to say we're joined now by Anne McElvoy, of course, co-host of Sky News' Politics at Sam and Anne's podcast, also executive editor at Politico. Very good morning to you, Anne. Good to see you.
Morning, nice to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the key foreign policy things on the agenda today, most notably meeting in Brussels, EU leaders debating whether to free up this frozen Russian assets to give to Ukraine. Do you go into that expecting them to give that approval, or is it really genuinely up in the balance?
I think it's really in the balance, Wilf, and I think I started the week a bit more optimistic. I mean, we knew that there was there's a genuine difficulty here if these funds are held in Belgium. Belgium is quite a sort of stressed politics as a country. We often don't talk about that. We think of Brussels as being the head of the EU, or the place where the EU meets. But there's definitely a difficulty there. There's also, I think, fundamentally, I think the Belgian leadership has just stuck out and said, we're taking all the risk for this. And what do people don't bring their funds here to invest in the future because they think that they could be sequestered in this kind of way. I think the real problem, and it leans on your last item I was just watching with interest there, is I don't think the Americans are really behind this plan. And I think if you did have an administration that wanted to freeze these Russian assets, I think it might be a lot easier. As it happens now, it's all on the Europeans. They've got 2 days to sort this out. I would be pleasantly surprised. I think it'd be great if it happened for Ukraine, but to put it this way, I'd be pleasantly surprised.
It's interesting, particularly on the US, because there was a sort of view a year or two ago where it would be like, this is something the Europeans should be doing so that the US doesn't have to fund everything. But as you say, that's kind of changed. If it doesn't go ahead, particularly given the mood music of the last month that might have suggested it would, how much is it proof, really, of another thing that Donald Trump is saying, that Europe is disorganised and too weak? I mean, Friedrich Merz has been articulating that point of view.
Yeah, Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, I think, due credit, he's really put himself out there on this. A lot of German voters are very sceptical about the idea of getting drawn any further into the hostilities in Ukraine, and they see a risk to Germany in that. But no, he, along with Keir Starmer, Macron, they're really trying to get this sort of E3 support system. But as you point out, if it doesn't come with money attached, just ask what Ukraine needs now. It needs not even so much weapons deliveries. We've talked a lot about this in 2025. Now their own industry is really revved up on weapons production and sophisticated production with the help of some allies. But they do need money. They need money to pay for it. And all the signs are that the mood in Washington is not just pay for it yourselves, Europe. It's worse than that. It's, well, we told you so. You're not very good at sorting anything out. And I think that is the problem. There's not even, if there was goodwill from Washington, you might be able to make more progress. Of course, I think if Donald Trump thinks he could shake Zelensky towards a deal by the end of the year or thereabouts, maybe that would change. But at the same time, the war is grinding, it is dreadful, and that is not getting any easier for Ukraine. They need speed, and the Americans have time, if you like, to put pressure on them, and so, of course, the Russians.
Can I ask you a bit more widely about defence? Because if I'm honest, I sometimes have that reaction to kind of defence chiefs saying that they need more money as like, yeah, of course, that's their prerogative. They're always going to say this, right? But it feels that something is shifting. And in the last week, we have had these various quite stark warnings, actually, about how safe we are.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, as you say, I've never met defence chiefs who said, you know what, I'm absolutely fine with the budget.
We're safe, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it, you're completely safe and I've got enough money for kit. That's never going to happen. But one, I think objectively, we can see that the international situation is very fraught, and depending on your reading of what comes out of the Ukraine conflict, and we've had, really, we've been shown, I'm a former Moscow correspondent, I've worked in that neck of the woods a lot, and in Ukraine. It's very clear, I think, that whatever the so-called peace deal that comes out of this, the Russia threat is not going away. And I covered Blaise Metroelli, the head of MI6, the new head of MI6, first female boss there for our foreign intelligence service, and then had some time with her also off record. There are really quite grave concerns. I don't think this is just sort of amping up some threat. And I know people quite rightly maybe say we're a bit sceptical when defence chiefs want more money. I think we have had quite a lot of failures in our procurement. We have a gap to fill. Yeah. So one way or the other, defence is going to be expensive. And the fact that the head of MI6 spent 4 pages of her speech on Russia tells its own story.
The procurement, for sure, those Ajax tanks.
Yeah, let's not get more of them.
And as always, a pleasure. Thanks so much. And don't forget to subscribe to Politics at Sam and Anne's if you haven't done so already. We've got, a lot to come in the next hour, including continue to focus on the government's new violence against women and girls policy. We'll be talking to the Children's Commissioner coming up.
Yeah, they're unveiling their long-awaited strategy to try and tackle what they're describing as a national emergency. Is it going to make any difference? Is it going to cut through? Is it enough money? Is misogyny as bad as they say it is? There's lots of stuff to get to.
Lots to get to. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
A very good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf, good morning from the both of us. Lots to get to today.
Teachers will be trained to spot early signs of misogyny in boys as part of the government's long-awaited strategy to tackle violence against women and girls.
Mourners gather in Sydney for the funeral of the Bondi Beach attacks' youngest victim, Matilda.
Diminishing hopes for peace in Ukraine, Putin lashes out at European leaders, calling them little pigs, and says Russia will take Donbass by force if necessary.
Plus, we're going to be hearing from one cricket fanatic heading to Australia to watch the Ashes without stepping foot on a single plane. I mean, look, he shouldn't bother, should he? Let's be honest.
Oh, he's not really going to get there in time, is he? We'll also be speaking to superstar actor Riz Ahmed about Shakespeare, social justice, and his passion to make the world a fairer place.
Hello, good morning. Now, the government is going to publish its long-awaited, long-delayed plans as well to crack down on violence against women and girls today. They want to try and change attitudes among boys and young men. So, in other words, not putting women changing behaviour at the centre of it, but boys changing behaviour. And there's a big focus on the classroom and teaching boys about misogyny.
The government points to a statistic that over 40% of young men have a positive view of the controversial influencer Andrew Tate. Teachers will be trained to spot the early warning signs of misogyny in boys and given support to tackle their views head-on. Here's Molly Malone's report.
So psychological abuse, economic abuse, tech abuse. Physical.
What teenagers are being taught is changing. At this school in North London, they're taking part in a workshop about healthy relationships.
What did I do now? You're such a flirt, and that just annoys me.
Role-playing scenarios to help them navigate life outside of the classroom.
You're always doing it, and it really annoys me.
We heard in the workshop phrases like toxic relationships, toxic masculinity. Does that sort of reflect what you're seeing online?
Yeah, of course. I feel like most people have experienced it, and it's not a good feeling, and it's good to learn how to deal with it.
Programmes like this are central to the government's new violence against women and girls strategy, with a requirement for secondary schools to start teaching them, as ministers look to focus on prevention, the attitudes of young boys, and challenging misogyny.
We know even if a young person isn't in an abusive relationship, they're experiencing peer pressure, or they're seeing things online, they're hearing things from, the manosphere, or they're hearing messages about toxic masculinity.
Halving violence against women and girls within a decade was a manifesto pledge. The strategy to get there has been highly anticipated and long delayed, but now comes with three core aims: to prevent with education to tackle the root causes of violence, to stop abusers by strengthening police tactics, and to better support victims within the criminal justice system.
It should never be allowed for you to hit your partner under any circumstances, no matter what.
The government have called violence against women and girls a national emergency. It is a message and a mission finding favour with celebrity endorsements. But there are concerns in the sector that a focus on prevention and education could see increased pressure on victim services that say they're struggling, with some shutting down. The incoming Victims Commissioner said, victim services are not an optional extra to this strategy. They must be the backbone of it. Without clear, sustainable investment and cross-government leadership, I'm concerned we run the risk of the strategy amounting to less than the sum of its parts, a wish list of tactical measures, rather than a bold, unifying strategic framework.
The violence against women and girls strategy does not sit in aspic. It is the beginning, not the end, and I have every confidence that it is the very best start towards that very ambitious target.
Every emotion in this room is valid. A target to halve violence against women and girls in the next 10 years, with a new approach for changing times. But still, old questions remain about funding, resources, and the scale of the problem. Molly Malone, Sky News.
Well, let's bring in Amanda, shall we? I mean, the government has really laid out the scale of the problem here. They're clearly very worried about it, as are many parents, I should say, as well, and people generally, I think, in the United Kingdom. What are we getting today?
Yes, so the focus that we've had so far this morning has been about this strategy for effectively trying to prevent this problem at source by going into schools and ensuring that teachers have more resources, really, to try and target young boys who are beginning to display misogynistic tendencies, basically. Earlier you were speaking to Jess Phillips and she kind of explained some of the issues that they're being told about by young girls and teachers, which is really the kind of the root of this that they're trying to tackle at source. Let's have a listen.
The government and what it is announcing around what we will try and do to intervene has come almost directly from teachers and young people themselves. So if you go and speak to any school in the country, the young girls will tell you the kind of behaviours that they're having to tolerate at school. And you might remember the sort of bra strap flicking and things. It's more than that. It is ideas about what women, how they should behave. It is the sharing of naked images. It is misogynistic attitudes towards teachers. And what teachers have told us is that they need the resources and schemes to refer children into to try and stop that behaviour from happening in the first place.
And what exactly this will mean is that, yes, they're doing a new kind of relationship education of the kind that we've had in schools for years and years, but that specifically, a bit like the Prevent scheme for extremism, they're saying that if boys are displaying these kind of tendencies of shared naked images or displayed other misogynistic behaviour, then they can be referred into a specific scheme, which means that they will get targeted lessons, targeted interventions. And the government sort of set aside, £16 million of government money, and additional $4 million they're saying will come from other sources to help pay for this. But this is just one element of the overall strategy, which is also involving sort of police, specialist investigators, NHS support and housing, refuge housing. So there's a whole series of different things they're announcing, and we'll find out more later as well.
It's really interesting because, using that phrase to tackle it at source, it's almost as if it's to try and tackle it as early as possible through the medium which the government can influence most of all, obviously through schools. But it doesn't feel like it's necessarily the source per se, which almost certainly is online. And I thought, actually, Sophie, what really jumped out, a lot of the interview jumped out, but when you were asking about whether we should ban social media for under 16s like in Australia, she didn't shut it down and just sort of pointed to, look, we're going to look all around the world. And it kind of comes back to that point we discussed a week or two ago. We can all watch and see if this works or not in Australia. And they were open to that, I thought.
Yeah, Amanda, I'm interested to get your take on that because it also struck me, and it felt to me like Jess Phillips was actually more warmer to the Australian model than people we've had in this chair before.
Absolutely. I mean, she explicitly said, we're going to look and see what happens in Australia and see if it works or not. And then the kind of implication seemed to be, well, actually, if it does succeed there, well, why wouldn't we be looking at introducing that? Which, as you say, is a lot further than we've heard from the government before on this. They've been exceedingly cautious about any suggestions about kind of an institutional cross-national ban on phones in schools or social media ban or that kind of thing. And of course, schools have their own policy on all of this. But the actual kind of idea of banning social media, I mean, it goes to the root of a lot of these problems, not just violence against women and girls, of course. And we know that the Tories have been calling for this kind of thing, and Scotland, Labour calling for more of this kind of thing. So certainly it is a situation that's moving, the technology is moving. There's obviously the relationship with technology companies, the relationship with the US, kind of all of that kind of complicated geopolitical stuff comes into it. But fundamentally, I mean, if this is the government's core strategy, I mean, the Prime Minister, really a big part of launching this, saying it's our responsibility to future generations. I think, as you say, Jess Phillips really giving an indication that she's willing to look at anything.
Yeah.
Amanda, great stuff. Thank you very much. To the war in Ukraine now. EU leaders are holding further talks today ahead of a crunch decision on potentially loaning tens of billions, hundreds of billions of euros in frozen Russian assets to Ukraine.
So the US is talking up progress towards ending the war, but there hasn't been much detail on the main sticking point in the negotiations, which is a suggestion that Russia has to give up some of its territory to Russia. And I have to say, the language coming out of the Kremlin's not exactly encouraging either. Vladimir Putin has called European leaders little pigs.
Our Europe correspondent Alistair Bunkle is in Brussels, where that meeting will be taking place later this morning. Ali, this is one of the most important, one of the most consequential European leaders' meetings we've had for decades.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I'm sure people hear too much that, this is a crucial day or this is a crucial moment for Ukraine. But today, does feel like it could be very significant. I say today, there's a chance if there's no agreement it could go into tomorrow as well. But this meeting is crucial. It's about trying to free up tens of billions of euros worth of frozen Russian assets to give to Ukraine to help fund them for the next couple of years, both in terms of fighting their war, but also paying for general civil society, to keep Ukraine functioning, basically. But it's controversial. These frozen assets are being held, most of them. I mean, there's actually quite a lot in the UK as well. The UK can make a separate decision, but most of those are being held at a bank, a clearinghouse called Euroclear, based here in Brussels. And the Belgian government is staunchly against giving them to Ukraine because they worry that at some point further down the line, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years from now, Russia will sue them for that money. Belgium will be left on the hook alone to foot that bill, which would cripple their economy. So there's got to be a lot of diplomatic wrangling to do today. There's already been a lot going on in the last couple of days. I'd say it's really hanging in the balance whether or not there'll be a decision in Ukraine's favour. If it does go Ukraine's way, if they can reach agreement to give up, to hand over that money, well, not only does it allow Ukraine to keep funding itself, it would give the EU a lot more power at the negotiating table. It would reduce Ukraine's leverage on Ukraine's dependency on the United States, particularly when Trump is kind of wavering. And it would show Vladimir Putin that Europe is united and Ukraine has the funding to carry on fighting for another few years, which, the Russian economy might not have it.
Ali, great stuff. Thanks so much. Ali Brunkel there for us in Brussels. It's going to be a very, very interesting day, or as Ali said, day and a half to watch developments there.
To Sydney now, where the friends and family of the Bondi shooting's youngest victim, 10-year-old Matilda, have said their final goodbye at her funeral.
The New South Wales Premier Chris Minns was also there and read this poem in her honour.
From darkness they struck to where candles glowed bright. A child of celebration was lost to terror's night. Yet in the hush of sorrow, her memory will shine, a beacon of her love, though her earthly light has gone. She bore the name Matilda to honour this great land, Australia's heart and spirit, forever hand in hand. Now angels gather softly, their wings a silken shroud, and heaven holds her closely far above the cloud. Her spirit, like a swagman's, will never fade away. She's waltzing with the angels, where love will always stay. Though sorrow fills the campfire and tears the night have found, Matilda's name now honoured in every sacred ground.
Nicole Johnson's in Sydney for us. There's something about the way they're talking about that little girl's name, the reason that they wanted to give her the name Matilda, which of course has that resonance in Australia in particular. How is the atmosphere in the country just those few days on for that tragedy?
Look, it's still very sombre and people are still in shock. I'm down at Bondi Beach and this area has now opened back up. This is the area where the attack happened. That's the pedestrian bridge behind us. It's also opened, but that is where the gunman fired from. So it's still a difficult place to be. Often people come up to us, they want to talk about their experience, about what happened. The story of Matilda is heartbreaking. The name does have a lot of resonance. It's a real traditional Australian name, and her parents were Ukrainian migrants and deliberately chose that name. They said it was their first Australian, and that's why they wanted to call her that. But that wasn't the only funeral that was held in Sydney today. We also had the funeral of Alex Clateman, 87 years old, a Holocaust survivor. And it's been reported that he died trying to protect his wife. We also had the funeral of Tibor Wietzen. And just a few minutes ago, actually, I met somebody who was a friend of his, and we spoke. His name is Scott Hatfield.
Tibor was a really wonderful man, It's a big shock to no longer have him here. he ran a social club at the synagogue for elderly people who were by themselves, and he and his wife would make sandwiches and cakes and other helpers, and then he would talk about the news of the day and make them feel good, and we would play them some music or tunes, which me and another friend of mine there who plays guitar. I play flute.
So across Australia, there is extra security at synagogues at the moment. The state parliament has been recalled in New South Wales. They're going to consider introducing even stricter gun control and registration laws in this country. And at a federal level, the government has introduced more legislation around the issue of hate speech, symbols that target racial vilification, those sorts of laws. So there are a lot of things also happening at the political level, because people are demanding, both state and federally, that something be done so that an attack like this can never take place in Australia again.
Nicole, thank you very much indeed. Nicole Johnson reporting there from Sydney.
Now, it's one of Shakespeare's most famous plays, and now Hamlet is being reimagined for the big screen.
So it's coming to UK cinemas early next year, and it brings what's been described as a modern angle to the classic play. Let's take a look.
To be or not to be.
Woe is me, to have seen what I have seen, to see what I have seen. It's common, my son. All that lives must die.
Well, joining us now is one of the stars
Looks
of
awesome.
the new... It does. So it's one of the stars of the new film, Riz Ahmed. I mean, that is Hamlet. That's not how I was taught Hamlet at school, I'll be honest. It looks very different.
Yeah, I think that's true for a lot of people, right? And actually, our director, Neil Corrier, when I approached him to make this film, which I've been wanting to make for such a long time, said, I'm not sure if I really get Shakespeare. I'm not sure if this is really for me. And I said, that's exactly who we want to make this film for. You don't have to decipher the language. You don't have to be a Shakespeare junkie. This is a thriller that happens to be Hamlet rather than the other way around.
Do you know what? To capture the text of Shakespeare for Monday, you hear the words "to be or not to be" with someone driving a Ferrari or whatever that sports car was. That captured that very well. You mentioned approaching the director to make this. You've been really behind producing it as much as starring in it, and have wanted to make this for a long time. I was reading that this was initially announced as a project with you attached to it in 2017.
Yeah, and actually the history goes back even further than that. We developed this, myself and the writer Mike Leslie, for 13 years. And I'm going to come out now live on the air and tell you that I made a promise to myself that I would make this film when I was in high school, when I was 17 years old. And that's because, you know, I felt very out of place as a teenager, like a lot of people, at my school, even in this country. And Shakespeare felt like everything I was on the outside of. And this incredible teacher, white Jewish guy from Wolverhampton who spoke fluent Punjabi, believe it or not, took me under his wing, gave me this play, and I related to it so much. It changed how I saw myself in relation to the culture. And I decided back then, you know, I really want to make a film of Hamlet that reimagines it, that is a version of it where everyone can relate to it, everyone can find themselves in it. And so, yeah, however many decades later, here we are.
I'm fascinated by that, because you've spoken before about, you know, like you just saying there, like how you felt at school and at university and also in the industry, by the way, as well. I think it's fair to say as well. What was it about Hamlet that made you feel connected? Because for many people, Shakespeare, as you would say, you know, is part of the kind of elite, you know, the kind of exclusive elite, but it spoke to you.
Yeah, you know, I often say Shakespeare's not dead, he's just been kidnapped. He's been kidnapped by the establishment, he's been kidnapped by the intellectuals, you know.
Yeah, he'd be down with everyone else, right?
Exactly.
In the masses.
Well, this is the thing.
People.
He was absolutely writing in noisy, crowded theatres. He was writing for princes and paupers at the same time. And for me, I think the reason why Hamlet is such an enduring story, it's actually never stopped being performed somewhere in the world since it was written 500 years ago, because it's a universal story. It's about family, betrayal, loyalty, duty, honour. So many things that people can find themselves in, but often the way it's performed is like an intellectual exercise, a poetry recital. But as you saw from our trailer, We wanted to make something that people feel first and foremost. We wanted to make something that's just very visceral and immediate and feels really, really contemporary.
Your industry is, you know, you have to go from project to project. You have successes, you have to wait for the next one. I kind of, by the sounds of how this film came about, this is sort of the embodiment of how long it can take for those things to kind of go right and fall into place. Talk to me about how that experience of the last decade or so has been for your career and where the big moments have come, because you're such a great product of the industry here, but I've read you talk about the US in an almost more positive light as being sort of down for some of your big breaks.
You know, I think that what we have here is an industry that is full of so much talent. And I think that actually the way the industry is going is you're seeing some of the biggest shows in the world, the British shows. I think we're finally starting to step into an updated narrative about who we are as a country and as a culture. And I hope that this film really is a part of that. And, you know, you're right, it's taken me a long time to make this, but I actually have to say, as much as I would have liked to have made this 10 years ago, I think this is the exact moment for this story. And that's because Hamlet is feeling the way a lot of us are right now. You know, Hamlet is about someone who feels really powerless in the face of kind of shameless injustice. I think millions of people watching this show right now are feeling like that. They feel like they're being gaslit about the injustice. They feel that actually, you know, maybe they're actually even complicit in it and they're confused about it. They don't know what to do. And that's how Hamlet feels. You know, Hamlet is facing a world that is so unfair, and actually the central kind of feeling for this character that I held on to is a feeling that and I'm sure you guys as newsreaders feel every day is, am I going crazy or has the world lost its mind? You know, you're watching these headlines every day and you're going, am I losing the plot or have we all lost it collectively? And that's the central question at the heart of Hamlet.
You spoke there about people seeing the injustice and like you're going crazy. I think an awful lot of viewers will relate to that, right? Not the going crazy bit, you're completely sane, obviously, but the feeling like you don't know how to react and perhaps you are complicit in something. What kind of injustice do you mean?
I mean, honestly, you could point to so many examples all around the world right now, right? And in a sense, it feels like, I would say that it feels like Hamlet was written for this exact moment, but actually a timeless story always feels timely, you know? And the reassuring thing for me is that actually we've been through moments like this before. We've been through moments of massive instability. We've been through moments where things feel really unfair. Actually, you know, the only time that Hamlet was not being performed somewhere in the world since it was written was when Oliver Cromwell took power. You know, we're not at that point right now, do you know what I mean? So this story has been there with us through thick and thin, and it's time for us to turn back to it for reassurance, for inspiration, and also just to know that that feeling is actually something that you're not alone with.
Yeah, so
I'm really interested in your take on AI for your industry as a whole. I mean, I have to say, listening to you talk just about this project, and we had another couple of great guests on this topic in the last week or so, it feels impossible to fake the passion, the depth, the kind of the story arc that you're clearly capturing in this film. Are you relaxed about the threat of AI or worried about it? How do you feel people are?
No, I don't think you can be relaxed about something that's going to change our lives so dramatically. But I do think that, in a way, AI can't do creativity. I think AI can make things, it can make finished products, but without friction, without struggle to get there, things don't have meaning. A frictionless life is a meaningless life. If I'd whipped up this film in like 15 seconds, I wouldn't be here talking to you about it this passionately. It's because it's taken me 13 years, because it's been with me since I was a teenager. That is what gives things their meaning. Life only has meaning if you have struggle. And me sweating to make something imperfect, I hope, will connect more with audiences than me, you know, pressing a button and coming up with a really shiny finished product. So I'm worried about the jobs. I'm worried about, you know, how people will be affected. But in a way, I think it's going to make us double down on what creativity really is. And it's about sharing your journey and sharing a part of yourself.
I think that's totally right. The human struggle thing, that is the thing that cannot be replicated. It's the same with sport. It's the same with all these great artists who, you know, lived on the edge, you know, Keats, Shakespeare, or, you can name any of them. But but it's from that human suffering almost that creativity comes.
Yeah, and I think that that's actually what makes this film, hopefully, but also the play of Hamlet, so relatable. It is about the struggle to be human. In fact, the most famous speech in the English language, you saw a clip of it there, to be or not to be. That's actually all about human struggle. It's often performed as though it's about giving up. Should I just give up? Should I end it all? But actually, if you read the play, it's about resistance. It's about pushing back against injustice. It's all about the things that make life difficult, but then in turn give them meaning.
Riz, thanks so much for joining us. Really, really interesting discussion, and we look forward to so the film doesn't come out till February.
It comes out in February, it's in cinemas then, and I feel confident to say that it's probably Shakespeare like you've never seen it before. And I'd say in particular people who have not connected with Shakespeare previously, we made this one for you guys.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to the film coming out in February, I think February the 6th, and until then, Riz, thanks so much for stopping by. Great to see you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Now, there is a little thing that we want to end with, I have to say. We just want to show you this extraordinary footage of an officer who really went beyond the line of duty to save a dog. So you can see there the dog on the ice, falling through the crack and going into that freezing cold
I have to look at the screen.
Water. And the officer's not having anything to do with it. He's going right in there and trying to work out. Yeah, to be honest, we are struggling to see this. I don't know.
I can't see it.
Is it possible to...
Anyway,
there we go. Oh, yeah, you can see him crawling across the ice.
I was going to say, I can't see the man yet. There we go.
So this is patrolman Michael Poon doing an ice rescue on Lake Mohawk near the Rainbow Trail over in New Jersey. He is not letting that dog drown. He absolutely is not.
Fantastic bit of bravery there. And if you manage to see it, and getting pulled out, there we go. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to be talking about that new tax that's going to be applied to electric vehicles based on a sort of distance per travel, and we'll be talking to a UK manufacturer of EVs about it next.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome, Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Ridge and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started. Welcome back to the news this morning. The government will publish its long-awaited plans to crack down on violence against women and girls today. Changing attitudes among boys and young men is at the centre of the strategy. There's a big focus on the classroom and teaching boys about misogyny.
EU leaders are holding talks today ahead of a crunch decision on loaning hundreds of billions of euros in frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. The money is seen as vital to Ukraine's ability to keep fighting because the country faces bankruptcy in early 2026 without more help.
People have been gathering in Sydney for the funeral of the youngest victim of the Bondi Beach attack, Matilda, just 10 years old. Her family moved to Australia from Ukraine. They said they chose her name because it symbolised their new life.
Now, from early next year, drivers of electric cars will have to pay congestion charges when travelling in central London to the tune of £13.50 per day.
It's quite interesting because it's all part of a wider move to try and get a bit more money, I think it's fair to say, out of electric car drivers. But of course, there has also been this push saying that we should all have cleaner vehicles on our roads. So what is going on? Let's try and find out, shall we? We're joined by Matt Galvin, Managing Director of the electric car brand Polestar. Do you feel a bit under attack?
No, but look, it's the wrong message at the wrong time, isn't it? Electric car demand grew by just 3.6% in November, which is the slowest rate it's grown at for nearly 2 years. And I think it shows there's mass confusion amongst consumers about what the government actually wants them to do. You know, it's really great news earlier this year when we saw the electric car grant getting announced, which was fantastic. Then, of course, there was the lifting of the cap, at which point the expensive car supplement came into effect for electric cars. And then we had the budget where the pence per mile charge was introduced, and of course the exemption for congestion charge was then taken away from electric cars. So I think it's very confusing out there right now.
I mean, it's certainly interesting kind of strategy to have a subsidised industry on one hand and then all of a sudden tax it. And I think a lot of just pure economists would look at that and think it's not a great idea. The other side of this is that a lot of these taxes aren't just for green reasons. You know, there's fuel duty as well as congestion charges. Congestion, obviously, in the title points to that. Is it fair to say that at some point it was going to be fair and expected that EVs would get taxed in the same way that combustion engine cars get taxed?
For sure. You know, look, I think everyone should pay their fair share of tax. You know, that's the way the world works, and I've got no issue with that whatsoever. But I think at a really critical time in the transition towards zero-emission vehicles, we need more incentives and less penalties for people to do the right thing. You know, actually, we're quite a sort of compliant race, aren't we? COVID showed that. You know, we kind of do what the government tells us to do, and this is a great opportunity for the government to be able to really push that agenda with the public to say, right, now is the time to get on board with electric cars, and you can have certainty in the future that it's going to be a safe place to put your money.
Yeah, I can definitely get the frustration about being told to do one thing and then it changing. I was interested to get your view on the paper mile thing, because I'll be honest, when this happened in the budget, our inbox kind of lit up, like a lot of people very, very confused by it, very worried about it. But there is an argument that actually paper mile is a better form of taxing cars, right? Because it taxes how often you use your car rather than just having one in the first place.
Yeah, and again, I don't think anyone really argues with that. I think it's about the deployment of it, you know, and how it's going to be measured. You know, what we hear from our customers is actually, I was thinking about buying an electric car, but because of this pence per mile thing, whilst I don't disagree with it wholeheartedly, I don't understand how it's going to work, you know, and it was quite concerning to hear government ministers say that they didn't really realise that an MOT wasn't due until the car is 3 years old.
It is quite confusing because you've got to estimate it, right? You have to. Is that right? You have to estimate how many miles
you have to estimate it, yeah. And
yeah.
I think the idea was that, you know, when your car goes for an MOT, they'll capture the mileage and therefore be able to tell how many miles you've done. But as I said, you know, MOTs are only due when a car is 3 years old. So what do you do for the first 3 years of that car's life? And I think customers are looking at that going, well, I understand it. I don't necessarily say it's wrong, but how's it going to work? You know, and this is uncertainty that we just don't need right now.
This week, the EU said that they're going to change their no more sales of combustion engine cars by 2035, and they're going to, in fact, still allow some after 2035. Obviously, in the UK, that ban is due to come in at 2030. Put aside whatever the EU's doing, put aside the green arguments, the tax arguments, are we ready as a nation to have just electric vehicles sold from 2030 onwards? I mean, very occasionally you see a garage change from being a petrol garage to an electric one, but 2030 is not far away. Is the government just very behind on being able to deliver? Forget the pros and cons of the argument on that pledge to ban EV sales, combustion engine sales beyond 2030.
I think we come back to the incentive point, actually. And if we want to ban those sales of those cars by 2030, there needs to be investment and incentives to allow people to make that transition. Actually, there's more EV charging stations than there are petrol pumps right now in the UK. Not many people know that, so that's come a long way. But we do need more certainty over the future. And as manufacturers, we're under a ZEV mandate now from the government, which says that next year, a third of sales have got to be pure EV. This year, we'll reach around 24-25% as an industry. So we're behind the curve. And I think the industry is doing its bit. Last year, £4.5 billion worth of investment in terms of discounts were put into the market by manufacturers to incentivise the change to electric cars. We really need the government to step up and do their bit now to help that transition.
Isn't the problem not so much the pumps, like all the electric charging stations, but how long it takes to charge? Like, if you've got a drive, it's kind of fine, because you can just plug it in. But if you don't have a drive, then you've got to drive somewhere and wait there, and it's not necessarily as practical. Like petrol, you literally you can do it in a minute.
Yeah, I mean, the charging times are coming down. Technology is improving. Polestar's launching new technology which allows you to charge from 10 to 80% in 12 minutes. So actually that's really made that much more accessible.
That's a lot
quicker, absolutely. And the people that can't charge at home, curbside charging is now becoming more and more prevalent. Just walk into your studios today, I notice a lot more of the plug-ins in the lampposts. So we're getting better. We're not there yet, which means we've got to continue with the investment and the incentives to make sure that it's a real viable choice for people moving forwards.
Matt, really interesting discussion. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Matt Gavin from Polestar.
Now, the government's turned up the heat on the former boss of Chelsea, Roman Abramovich. Keir Starmer's told the Russian billionaire to pay up or face legal action.
Abramovich previously pledged £2.5 billion for victims of the Ukraine war from the sale of the football club, which was forced on him by the Boris Johnson government. Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper talked to our political editor, Beth Rigby.
Foreign Secretary, you say it's time for Roman Abramovich to pay up. Why now?
Well, he's had 3 years. It's 3 years since the commitment was made that the proceeds of the Chelsea sale would go into humanitarian support in Ukraine. He hasn't taken those steps, and that's why we're now issuing this licence and saying that if he doesn't now take those steps, move that money, then we will need to go to court.
But is it because you think that the war could be coming to an end? Is it to prevent him claiming ownership of the cash again if a ceasefire comes into effect? Is there a kind of a rush to do this at this point? Because it seems a bit random otherwise.
That is the result of, there's been a huge amount of work and attempts and different efforts at different times to get Roman Abramovich to honour the commitment he made and to do the things that he is supposed to do as a result of the agreement that was signed at that time. That has been tried in different ways through the years, and it's still come to nothing. That's why we're doing the licence. So no, it's not linked to the timing of the work that's underway on the peace process. It's linked to the fact that we've just reached that point. We have tried every possible avenue to get him to do the right thing, and now we are taking this action with the licence.
And Foreign Secretary, you're threatening to take him to court if he doesn't surrender the funds himself. What sort of punishment would you be pushing for if he doesn't comply? What are the consequences for him?
Well, the licence runs, and we are now urging him to honour this licence, to honour the commitments that were made, and to give him a few months in which to do so. If he doesn't, we will then go to court to require that payment to be made. Because, look, this is money that is supposed to go for humanitarian support, for people in Ukraine, maybe for veterans, maybe for children who need support. This is the right thing to do.
Now, thousands of people are going to turn to food banks to stop them and their families going hungry over Christmas, and it's a crisis that is getting worse.
More people than ever are reaching out for help from their local communities, and new figures reveal that over 65s are among those struggling the most.
Well, here to tell us more is Simi Rabadrakuma, who is the Director of Communications and External Affairs at Trussell, formerly known as the Truffle Trust. So talk to us about what you're saying.
Yeah, well, we know that winter has consistently been the busiest time of year for food banks. Not only are people dealing with extremely high costs of essentials, we all know that costs of like rent and food have been escalating in recent years. But particularly at this time of year, there are additional costs, things like energy bills, and having to stretch very low incomes across those additional costs can be really difficult at this time of year, can tip people over and mean that people just can't keep their heads above water and therefore have to turn to a food bank.
And tell us about that age spread that we mentioned in the intro. Is that normal that it would tilt to over 65s?
So it's something that we've seen. We've seen an uptick in recent years. And so last winter, for example, we saw 3 times the number of parcels going to over 65s than 5 years ago, just before the pandemic. Similarly, families with children receive a huge amount of support. So last winter, we provided around 250,000 parcels just to families with children alone. So we're quite concerned about those sorts of groups that are feeling quite under pressure this winter and really need that support. And it's why any support that people can give at this time of year is so vital.
Yeah, it's critical, isn't it? Can I just ask, because demand for food banks is going up, and this is often seen as like a negative thing, basically, that it shows that more people are in need turning to food banks. Could you flip that and also say it's actually a good thing? Because it means there are more food banks, that the supply of food banks has just increased over the last few years. More people are using them. That doesn't necessarily show people more in need. It just means people are getting more support.
So we do know that, for example, the number of food banks has stayed relatively the same over recent years. And what we have seen is that level of need increase. And that's concerning for us. We know
so it's what you're seeing, the kind of person who is going to you and the state they're in and the need they're in has changed, is what you're saying.
So there are some consistent groups that have needed help. So, for example, disabled people, 3 in 4 people turning to food banks are disabled. Families with children have consistently needed support. But what we've seen in recent years is there have been people who've turned to a food bank for the first time, particularly across the pandemic and with the cost of living crisis. We know that around 30% of people referred to food banks are from working households. We've seen increased people facing housing pressures over the last couple of years turning to food banks. So some of that has changed, and it's that sort of creeping reach of really severe hunger and hardship that is particularly worrying.
So I guess to Sophie's point in a different way, if there was suddenly more supply from Trussell or from food banks more generally, would it be immediately taken up, do you think? I mean, and how is the funding situation?
So it's quite a difficult time at the moment. With the cost of living pressures, we have seen that need is really outpacing donations at food banks. It's why food banks have told us when we surveyed them recently that preparing for this winter is actually the hardest it's ever been. And food banks are having to make up that gap, so spending their own resources, their own money to purchase stock just to be able to meet that level of need. It's why it's so concerning and why we're hoping that people can, if they are in a position, can help with our winter appeal.
And so what is the message then for viewers? What do food banks need? If you're watching this, you think, you know what, I really want to try and help out. Should you give money to food banks? Should you give donations, like your spare bit of shopping or whatever it is? That tin that's been in your cupboard for 6 months and you still haven't used, you know, what should we be doing?
Well, food banks, they exist because of the generosity of the public. Any donation is welcome. We do have a winter appeal that's welcoming financial donations. The reason for that is because it means that that support can then go wherever it's needed most. So then food banks are able to provide the particular supplies that they know that they need or that they're lacking. At this time of year, sometimes that's practical support like water bottles and blankets and things like that. But also there are particular goods that food banks might be running low on, and that financial support gives food banks the flexibility to make sure that they're addressing the needs that are the kind of priorities.
Yeah, because I guess it could be like, you know, toothpaste and sanitary products as well as tins of beans or whatever as well. Thank you so much.
Sumi, great stuff, thank you.
Thank you.
After the break, we're going to be talking about the Ashes and a cricket fan in particular who's been travelling to Australia without using a plane, and we hope he gets there before it's all over.
Does he still want to get there? I don't know. It's a difficult question. We'll be talking to him coming up next.
The Data and Forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparency in journalism. We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories. Sky News has been given exclusive data Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in. Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok. We've been undercover inside Asia's huge network of scam centres.
This compound is, without a doubt, the worst. It is essentially hell on earth.
We cover a vast, varied and dynamic region that's shaping the rest of the world.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
A British teenager is putting in a hell of an innings as he travels from Manchester to Australia to watch the Ashes.
So Tommy Lamb has set the goal of reaching Australia, and if you're saying like, no, what's the big deal here? Everyone's going to Australia for the Ashes. Well, he's trying to do it without getting on a plane. Right, he's trying to do it without getting on a single plane between Manchester and Australia. But of course, I guess the question we're all asking is after another poor performance from England this morning, the series could be over before he actually makes it. Let's hope not.
Well, he started in Manchester, he travelled to the Netherlands, making his way through Europe, all the way to Bulgaria, then on to Turkey, ticking off parts of Asia and the Middle East on the way. We believe he's now made his way to the capital of Timor, Dili, which I knew Sophie knew already.
Yeah, of course.
And hopes to get to, I guess, well, he must be on a boat for the final bit, mustn't he?
So I think. Well, we'll ask him in a minute,
swim.
but I think sadly it feels like he's going to have to try and get onto boat. Well, anyway.
Well, he's allowed on a boat.
Yeah, he is.
Otherwise, he wouldn't have got anywhere.
Tommy,
still be in Manchester.
We've been trying to get to this interview for ages, and we finally got you, which we're very, very excited about. Let's fingers crossed the reception holds. Where are you?
You are right, yeah. I'm in Dili, in the capital of Timor-Leste, in East Timor, just north of Australia.
And you're so close, yet so far, particularly when you factor in that this series, oh, mate, could be over by the time you get there.
Well, I must say, before I set off, I was always aiming for Melbourne, and then it switched to Adelaide because I knew I might be late. And I always knew that there was a good chance we'd be 3-0 down. But I'm a Man United fan. I'm used to going to sporting events and not really, the result isn't the only thing that's important for me, put it that way. So I'm sure it'll be a good time whether we win or lose. I've got faith in the lads. Maybe they'll give me a win once I arrive, even if it is 4-1 or something.
Well, Ben Stokes and Josh Raj will have to do something pretty extraordinary in the morning, I think. But, you never know. You never know, right? I love the hope. I feel like you've had quite a few people on your social media saying, look, mate, just turn around. It's not worth it. It's a horror show. What's your message to them? Do they need to keep the faith?
Yeah, absolutely keep the faith. It's not over till it's over, for sure. I definitely wish I was there for Adelaide. I wish, just in case, because it does look quite likely it'll all be over. But this journey's not just been about the result of the Ashes. There's been a lot more to it. I want to spend Christmas with my family in Australia, obviously. And it's a shame that I'm not going to be there for Adelaide, but I'm sure I'm going to have a great time for the 2 tests that I am there, whatever the result is.
And just tell us about the journey. I mean, obviously there was, that target of having Christmas with your family and watching the Ashes, but why did you set yourself this particular challenge, and what have you kind of experienced and learnt along the way?
I've always loved the idea of travelling in this way. I want to travel off the beaten track. I'm not a big fan of touristy places, and my dad told a story of someone else who did a similar challenge about 2 years ago, just telling the story. And when I heard that, I already knew that the Ashes would be taking place if I did the trip after school. And it just seemed like the perfect chance to create that combination, to force myself off the beaten track, go to places I otherwise wouldn't be going to, it all came together brilliantly so far, and I've had an absolutely brilliant time. The locals are incredible. I love some of the places I've been, especially knowing that I wouldn't have gone to those places had it not been for setting myself this challenge.
I love this. I think it's amazing. We look at some footage of you kind of playing cricket in some of the most unlikely of places. It looks extraordinary. Is there a particular kind of moment from your journey that you'd pick out that really stood out to you?
Yeah, there was one night I travelled through Iran, and I was in the Rocky Village, which apparently is quite famous, and it's where basically everyone lives in caves, and my guide let me go off by myself. I had to have a guide in Iran. You're not allowed to go by yourself as a British person. And my guide sort of let me off by myself because there's not too many people there. And I went and experienced some lovely Iranian hospitality from 2 different groups of people, sat down and chatted to them. And just that whole day, it was not just the experience, but the content that I was making. I filmed for YouTube and Instagram, and it was all just a dream come true. Those sort of experiences were absolutely priceless, and for me are far more valuable than seeing any museum or seeing any site that for me I can see online.
Well, Tommy, we really appreciate you joining us. What a great endeavour. Good luck with the final leg of it, and we all hope, for all sorts of reasons, that it's not quite over by the time you get there, as unlikely as that sadly seems.
Great to
Thank you very much for having me.
Great to speak there to Tommy. What a journey.
Bit
what
of a delay there with East Timor, but understandable.
Yeah, we get it.
We showed some of his videos there. 8 out of 9 of them were fantastic. One of them just seemed to be his bathroom in one of his hotel rooms. But
but that's the reality.
Why we selected that one.
It's like the reality of travelling, right? It's not all glamour and,
we could have picked him out. But great stuff. Kudos to him. We're going to just quickly get everyone up to speed as well with the Ashes more broadly, because Lizzy Ammon from the Times able to join us. And Lizzy, just give us an update. I mean, obviously, it's a 5 test series. Already England are 2-0 down. Where do we stand in this critical third of 5 tests?
I'm afraid it's not good news for England fans. The Ashes are very much slipping away. It was another bad day for England. We've actually only had 8 days cricket in this series, despite being in the 3rd test. It was a really good day for batting, and England really rather squandered it. There was some fight from Harry Brook, the vice-captain, and a lot of fight from Ben Stokes, the captain, who spent most of the day out there in 40-degree heat in Adelaide and suffered cramps and got hit on the helmet. But a bruising day for England because Australia was so good with the ball. They had their captain, Pat Cummins, back in the ranks, having been injured, and he bowled spectacularly, as did the spinner, Nathan Lyon. And really, England have been outclassed. So they trail by 158 runs, but they're 8 wickets down, and that's a big ask. It is a good batting pitch. If they can hang in a bit longer in the morning on the 3rd day, perhaps there's a bit of hope. But sadly, yeah, it looks like the Ashes are staying in Australia.
I feel like, if you're an England cricket fan, the thing that's kind of particularly bruising about all this is the sort of optimism we went into this Ashes with, like feeling like, this team, Joe Root, Jofra Archer, Ben Stokes, like there was something magic happening here. And frankly, the story has been of England being outclassed by Australia. Is this like the kind of end of Bazball? Is this a verdict on Bazball?
It is a bit of a, yes, it is, because this Australia side are an ageing side. They're missing one of their key bowlers in Josh Hazlewood. There was a real opportunity, but there has been some inability to adapt, inability to grasp situations, inability to grasp opportunities, particularly in the first test, where they were really on top and then they lost 9 wickets in a session. And there's been a sort of failure to be up for the fight. Some of these England guys have not been in Australia, have played in Australia before. This is their first Ashes. I think they've been taken aback by just the level of scrutiny and pressure. But Australia are always, I mean, he's not the first captain to go to Australia and get Ahmed Ben Stokes. He's in a long line. So it just is really hard. But yeah, there will be a bit of a reckoning after this and a bit of an evaluation about quite what went wrong, because it has been 3 years in the planning since Rob Key and Brendan McCullum took over the management. They put all their eggs into the basket of this Ashes, and it really hasn't gone according to plan.
Well, what time does it kick off again tomorrow? Bright and early?
It's 11:30 tonight, GMT, yeah.
So late. It's a late one.
Well, that's too late for me.
You can stay up all night, but I haven't got a programme on Friday.
Catch a bit of it the early morning. Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Oh, I'm so depressed about the Ashes. I'm not going to lie. It's very, very depressing. But hey,
but
it's over soon.
It might not be over soon. We'll see. Either way, put it this way, at least you didn't travel to Australia.
That's true. That's true. To try and catch it.
Sorry, Tommy. It was great to have you with us. Good luck.
At least he was appreciating the journey, if not the end destination.
We'll be right back.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Good morning, it is 9 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost. There you are, sorry.
Well, good morning from me as well.
Teachers will be trained to spot early signs of misogyny in boys. It's part of the government's long-awaited strategy to tackle violence against women and girls.
Diminishing hopes of peace in Ukraine, President Putin lashes out at European leaders, calling them little pigs, and says Russia will take Donbass by force if necessary.
Mourners gather in Sydney for the funeral of the youngest victim of the Bondi Beach attacks, Matilda.
And in just 1 week until Christmas, we'll have 22 members of the Burial and Bells Choir singing some Christmas carols to kick off your final countdown to the festivities. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, me too. And also we're going to be looking at how the broadcasting legend, Sir David Attenborough, made one young fan's birthday a birthday to remember.
A very good morning to you. The government will publish its long-awaited plans to crack down on violence against women and girls today. Changing attitudes among boys and young men is at the centre of that strategy, and there's a big focus on the classroom and teaching boys about misogyny.
So the government is pointing to a statistic that over 40% of young men have a positive view of the controversial influencer, self-proclaimed misogynist, Andrew Tate. So teachers are going to be looking to try and spot early warning signs of misogyny and also given support to tackle their views head-on. Here's Molly Malone.
So psychological abuse, economic abuse, tech abuse.
What teenagers are being taught is changing. At this school in North London, they're taking part in a workshop about healthy relationships.
What did I do now? You're such a flirt, and that just annoys me.
Role-playing scenarios to help them navigate life outside of the classroom.
You're always doing it, and it really annoys me.
We heard in the workshop phrases like toxic relationships, toxic masculinity. Does that sort of reflect what you're seeing online?
Yeah, of course. I feel like most people have experienced it, and it's not a good feeling, and it's good to learn how to deal with it.
Programmes like this are central to the government's new violence against women and girls strategy, with a requirement for secondary schools to start teaching them, as ministers look to focus on prevention, the attitudes of young boys, and challenging misogyny.
We know even if a young person isn't in an abusive relationship, they're experiencing peer pressure, or they're seeing things online, they're hearing things from, the manosphere, or they're hearing messages about toxic masculinity.
Halving violence against women and girls within a decade was a manifesto pledge. The strategy to get there has been highly anticipated and long delayed, but now comes with 3 core aims: to prevent with education to tackle the root causes of violence, to stop abusers by strengthening police tactics, and to better support victims within the criminal justice system.
It should never be allowed for you to hit your partner under any circumstances, no matter what.
The government have called violence against women and girls a national emergency. It is a message and a mission finding favour with celebrity endorsements. But there are concerns in the sector that a focus on prevention and education could see increased pressure on victim services that say they're struggling, with some shutting down. The incoming Victims Commissioner said, victim services are not an optional extra to this strategy. They must be the backbone of it. Without clear, sustainable investment and cross-government leadership, I'm concerned we run the risk of the strategy amounting to less than the sum of its parts, a wish list of tactical measures, rather than a bold, unifying strategic framework.
The violence against women and girls strategy does not sit in aspic. It is the beginning, not the end, and I have every confidence that it is the very best start towards that very ambitious target.
Every emotion in this room is valid.
A target to halve violence against women and girls in the next 10 years, with a new approach for changing times. But still, old questions remain about funding, resources, and the scale of the problem. Molly Malone, Sky News.
Let's bring in Amanda, who's here with us to discuss it a bit further. What do we know about the government announcement so far? I guess there's more to come. Based on what we have learnt, when does it all unfold?
Yes, so there has been a kind of series of different announcements about the police, about the NHS coming through this week as part of this strategy, which, as you say, is all going to be unveiled in full later on today. But the focus of the announcement today is what the government wants teachers to be able to do in schools to really try and prevent misogyny taking root in young boys when they're sort of in their early teenage years. And in particular, they're setting up a kind of referral scheme where teachers will actually be able to point someone to additional lessons, additional sessions, really trying to kind of stamp out these kind of attitudes when they're first displayed. If a young boy has started sharing nude images or something like that, displayed misogyny towards a teacher. And they're actually even comparing it to the Prevent scheme to tackle extremist ideology. Earlier, Sophie was speaking to Jess Phillips about this, and she kind of talked about the kind of issues that young girls and teachers are telling the government about what they're facing in school every day.
The government and what it is announcing around what we will try and do to intervene has come almost directly from teachers and young people themselves. So if you go and speak to any school in the country, the young girls will tell you the kind of behaviours that they're having to tolerate at school. And you might remember the sort of bra strap flicking and things. It's more than that. It is ideas about what women, how they should behave. It is the sharing of naked images. It is misogynistic attitudes towards teachers. And what teachers have told us is that they need the resources and schemes to refer children into to try and stop that behaviour from happening in the first place.
It's interesting to hear, her talking about like setting out the extent of the problem, acknowledging how much it is. I tried to kind of challenge her on whether the government was doing enough. Like, in other words, say that, if you've got a 14-year-old boy who is influenced by Tommy Robinson, who is influenced by Andrew Tate, is the issue social media itself?
Yes, and I thought she was much more open to the idea of a possible Australia-style ban for under-16s than I think we've heard any government minister being before. I mean, this is something that the Tories, the Lib Dems, even Labour in Scotland have been talking about, both this and banning phones in schools, which is kind of similar but slightly different. And actually the government position before has always been, well, it's kind of up to schools to set this, it's up to parents to kind of manage this. But she was really saying, well, we want to look at Australia. Here's an example where they're doing it, and we'll see whether or not it works, and we are open to, frankly, whatever it takes, because, as you say, it's a huge uphill battle. This will be the fourth strategy against violence against women and girls in the past 15 years. They want to halve it by the end of the decade. That was a manifesto promise. But already you've got, for example, the Domestic Abuse Commissioner saying, well, the aims of this are all well and good, but the level of investment isn't nearly enough to deliver this. So, yes, we're going to find out more later, but clearly I think Jess Phillips wanting to signal that they are open to being even more radical.
Amanda, great stuff. Thanks so much. Now to the war in Ukraine, and EU leaders are holding further talks today ahead of a crunch decision on loaning, or potentially loaning, tens or hundreds of billions of euros in frozen Russian assets to Ukraine.
The US has been talking up progress that they've made, but look, today President Zelensky said there are no aligned peace proposals. In other words, there's nothing that Ukraine and Russia both agree on, and he's also calling on European leaders for more support. And in the meantime, Vladimir Putin has been calling everyone little pigs. So I think that perhaps speaks for itself on how it's going from their perspective. We could talk now to our Europe correspondent, Alistair Brussels, who is in Brussels. Alistair Funkel, sorry. It's been a long morning. Alistair.
A long year.
I got a little smile out of Alistair there, though. I'll take it. Are you smiling when you're looking at where these peace talks are going?
I should call you Sophie Studio, maybe. I think that it is in the balance here. The general vibe is that a deal needs to be done, and it needs to be done during this meeting, whether or not it takes a day, 2 days, or even longer. The importance is trying to get Ukraine the money it needs to continue fighting Russia for a year or two more, if that's what it takes. There is disagreement, particularly the Belgians, who sort of have not custodianship, but most of the frozen Russian assets are in Belgium. And the Belgian concern is that Russia will take action against them through the courts or through other ways, and they will be left isolated and on the hook for that. So that is why the Belgians are against it. Viktor Orban The Hungarian leader I spoke to earlier, he's against it. He thinks more money, as he said to me, is more war. So his idea, I mean, people accuse him of being very pro-Kremlin, but his position is that if you give Ukraine money, then they'll be able to keep on fighting. But I'm sure President Zelensky, who is expected here today, will say, yeah, but that is the point. We need to keep defending ourselves and put Russia in a position where it no longer wants to continue the war. So an awful lot to discuss. I think it was sort of best summed up, though, by the Polish leader Donald Tusk when he arrived.
Now we have a simple choice: either money today or blood tomorrow. And I am not talking about Ukraine only, I am talking about Europe. And this is our decision to make, and only ours. I think all European leaders have to finally rise to this occasion. And this is all what I can say today. Now.
I asked Kaja Kallas, the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs, actually sort of the Foreign Secretary for the EU earlier, what chance she would put on a deal being found. She put it at 50-50. So I think that pretty much sums up where things are as they begin this meeting, a meeting that's probably going to go on long into the day and possibly into tomorrow as well.
It's so interesting, Ali, that the odds have slipped so much to such a toss-up ahead of that meeting. I mean, the other thing that is just fascinating to me is a year or two ago, across actually both US administrations, I think there was a very clear sentiment Europe should be doing more, including specifically, you've got these hundreds of billions of Russian assets, use that rather than us, the US, having to continue to foot the bill. And yet the mood music in the last 24, 48 hours is that the Trump administration doesn't want this EU approval to go through because it might prolong the war and strengthen Ukraine's hand in negotiations or whatever else. Ironically, if it doesn't go through, doesn't it prove some of the Trump administration's points towards Europe being weak and disorganized and frankly, spineless? There's so much going on this.
Yeah, I think totally. I mean, that is certainly in the minds of the leaders arriving here today. It's that if we, I'm using the sort of we as a collective for the EU, if we don't find a deal, then what kind of message does that send to Putin, who will see a divided Europe, and who knows how he might try and take advantage of that? What message does it send to Donald Trump, who has already been scathing about the EU and European leaders in interviews over the past week? Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, said if there is no, and this was a couple of days ago, he said if there is no deal found, then the EU's credibility would be damaged potentially for years. So there is a lot riding on it. I should say I think one of the reasons Donald Trump is slightly against this deal happening is because there were moves in the United States to see some of that money, 210 billion euros, put into 2 US investment funds to be used in future for Ukraine's goods. So I think there is a self-interest in America there. But, you know, when EU leaders are hearing what Donald Trump has got to say about them, they know that if they can get this deal through, it shows teeth. And also, it really does bring them into the negotiating table much more, because if they are one of the primary backers, financial backers, if not the primary financial backer of Ukraine, then they will have to have a say in whatever peace negotiations go forward.
Ali, great stuff as always. Thanks so much.
Let's go to Sydney now, where the friends and family of the youngest victim in the Bondi Beach shooting, 10-year-old Matilda, have said their final goodbye at her funeral.
The New South Wales Premier Chris Minns was also there and read a poem in her honour.
From darkness they struck to where candles glowed bright. A child of celebration was lost to terror's night. Yet in the hush of sorrow, her memory will shine, a beacon of her love, though her earthly light has gone. She bore the name Matilda to honour this great land, Australia's heart and spirit, forever hand in hand. Now angels gather softly, their wings a silken shroud, and heaven holds her closely far above the cloud. Her spirit, like a swagman's, will never fade away. She's waltzing with the angels, where love will always stay. Though sorrow fills the campfire and tears the night have found, Matilda's name now honoured in every sacred ground.
Nicole Johnson joins us in Sydney now. And Nicole, that mood there captured at that specific funeral, which is one that understandably so many people are focused on, does it represent the broader mood across the country?
Yes, it does. It's still shock, a great deal of sadness, some acceptance, I'm sure. It's very difficult days in Sydney and in Australia. Clearly, there'll be a week of funerals to come. We've only had the first few so far. The case of Matilda had a lot of attention, a really tragic story. She was only 10 years of age. Her middle name was B, actually, and so a lot of people are wearing stickers with bumblebees on them to represent that. But it isn't the only funeral that we've had today. We've also had the funeral of 87-year-old Alex Klaitman. He was a Holocaust survivor and he was originally from Ukraine. We also had the funeral of Tiber Wietzen. Now, I met a friend of his a little bit earlier and his name is Scott Hatfield. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Tiber was a really wonderful man, you know. It's a big shock to no longer have him here. He ran a social club at the synagogue for elderly people who were by themselves, and he and his wife would make sandwiches and cakes and other helpers. And then he would talk about the news of the day and make them feel good. And we would play them some music or tunes, which me and another friend of mine there who plays guitar. I play flute.
So people are coming down to Bondi to talk about their loss. You can see behind me, this is the pedestrian bridge that the gunmen used to fire on the crowd below. They used that bridge to then enter into the festival and the celebrations that had been the Hanukkah event. It is very hard days still to come here in Sydney, but we are seeing some developments on the political front. A meeting, the state parliament has been recalled in New South Wales. They'll be discussing making the gun laws here even stricter and gun registration. And also the federal government has said that they want to tighten rules regarding hate language and racial vilification. So the public is demanding a far stronger response to make sure that nothing like this can ever take place in Australia again.
Nicole, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Nicole.
Now, a bomb squad was called to Westminster after a mysterious Christmas package was left unattended. Well, Oliver's here to tell us a bit about this. And Oliver, you've been out and about investigating.
Yeah, so look, it's Sky News policy. We don't report on suspicious packages or bomb threats because 99% of the time it turns out to be nothing. But this morning, all around Westminster was closed off because there had been deemed by the police to be a suspicious package left by the Victoria Tower, very close to our offices. And it turns out that once the cordons were lifted and the bomb squad vehicles had gone and the robots had gone, that it was actually what appears to be Christmas cards from no less than a Labour minister that had been left, which has then necessitated these calls.
So you took these pictures then? These are the cards themselves?
Yeah, these are the cards themselves. I think the police might have thought I was a spy or some sort of spook. The cordon was open, but they let us in. The reason we know it's a minister, or we think it's a minister, is because on the front there you can see the port. Is it portcullis? What's it?
Yeah, it's the portcullis logo.
The portcullis logo, and underneath is Miata
Fanbuller, right?
Miata Fanbuller's name is on there. So
Labour MP, we should say.
Labour MP for Peckham, Communities Minister. We don't know how they got there. We don't know why they were left. We don't know the reason why it was deemed to be such a threat, but it was. Parliament was locked down. It has now been reopened. We've approached Miss Fambolet for a comment, but so far we've heard nothing back.
I mean, we can now, I guess, see makes their Christmas card list by flicking through contents. Not that we will, or have done.
They look quite cute. Quite cute design.
Yeah, I think designed by a local constituent or maybe a few local constituent children. But yeah, right before all of the MPs go for their Christmas recess.
I love it. I love it. Absolutely great. Oliver, thank you very much. Good sleuthing. Top sleuthing, I have to say. Coming up, we are going to be talking again about the government strategy on violence against women and girls. It's long awaited and it's something that they have promised to try and get a grip on.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Ridge and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started. Well, we've got more now on our top story. The government has promised to harm violence against women and girls within the decade, and they're trying to change attitudes among boys and young men at the beginning of their strategy, the centre of their strategy. Well, joining us now is Lisa Squire, whose daughter, Libby, was raped and murdered. She was aged 21, and that was in 2019. Thank you so much for being on the programme. I remember Libby very, very clearly. I should say, is the first thing I want to say. And what happened to her was unbearable. You know, she was a student at Hull University. Yes. She was targeted after a night out. I remember very clearly, you know, that kind of weight. It must have been, I can't imagine what it must have been like for you.
Yes, 48 days of not knowing where she was absolutely horrendous.
And thank you for coming on and talking about it a little bit as well. I'm sure it is difficult for you, even though you also, I'm sure, want to talk about Libby as well. Yes. Firstly, what do you make about the strategy against violence against women and girls? How important do you think it is?
I think it's really taking some positive steps. I mean, obviously, there's a lot to do. And I've been saying this for the last 5 or 6 years. We've got loads to do, but I think the government are moving in the right direction because, I mean, there's been lots of talk and not very much action. So I'm really encouraged by this morning's announcements.
Is there anything in particular that you're kind of pleased about?
Yes, I like the whole. I like the element of teaching in schools, of educating in schools. I mean, it shouldn't be down to school teachers. It should be starting from the home when the children are, small enough to understand. But it's obviously not happening. So school is the next place. And actually, in reality, school teachers spend more time with the children than we do, or with young people than their parents do in reality. So yeah, I'm really encouraged about that. But I think whether the funding will be enough, I think there probably will need to be an uplift in funding. But it's the idea is there and the promise is there.
The man who killed Libby was a stranger to her.
Yes.
But he committed a lot of offences before. This is what really sort of strikes me about this, spying on women through windows, masturbating in the street, breaking into people's homes to steal intimate items. Do you think we need to take these red flags a lot more seriously?
Absolutely. And that's been my biggest part of the thing, the work I've been doing is I go into schools, I go into police forces. I mean, I'll go anywhere that anybody will have me, and I talk about non-contact sexual offences. It is not normal behaviour for a man to be doing the things that you've described. They are red flag offences, they are gateway offences, and I think if we can focus a bit more on those, then it seems logical to me that if we can stop some of those, we'll stop some rapes and or murders.
And is it something that needs to start, or this is more something that's sensibly paired with all of this, with young boys in the classroom, as the government's been talking about today?
I think it needs to be paired together. But I also think we need to be talking to our young women and young girls and saying, and women and girls, and saying to them, if you are a victim of a non-contact offence, you absolutely have to report it. Because, historically, and even I think still today, women are conditioned to accept it. We just think, it's just that strange man, But it's not OK. And if the police don't know anything about it, they can't do anything about it. So I think it's about bringing it all together, educating our young people and saying that this behaviour is not normal, this behaviour is not normal. You must, and just giving them the information, because I do believe that young people are the way forwards.
It's true about not reporting. I mean, I've been flashed a couple of times and it didn't even cross my mind to report it. But I remember, am I right in saying that Libby happened to Libby?
Yes, so in the November before she died, she rang me and she said, Mum, I was walking home and a man flashed at me. And she was absolutely livid. She was so angry. And I talked her down. I said, you need me to come and get you? Do you want to come home? She said, Mum, I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. I'm just so angry. But I didn't tell her to report it because I didn't know. I didn't know then. I mean, it's happened to me. It's happened to all of my girlfriends. And I didn't know. I know better now.
We're looking at pictures of Libby.
Oh, bless her.
And there's the two of you as well. You read this incredible victim impact statement to court. That, if it's OK, I just want to read a little bit of.
Yes, of course.
You said, in any times of trouble, she wanted me, her mum. She knew I would do anything in my power to help her. And knowing I was not there when she needed me will haunt me for the rest of my life. So first of all, you sound like an amazing mum. Like an amazing, amazing mum to Libby and your other children as well. But is there anything you want to share about Libby? Like any memories you have of her?
Oh, she was so funny. I mean, she didn't even know how funny she was. She was an amazing big sister. She absolutely idolised her 3 siblings and was the best daughter. I mean, all of my kids are wonderful, but of course, as I said to you earlier, my other 3 children will say, of course, Libby's the best. But yeah, her and I were incredibly close. I mean, I'm close with all my children, but Libby and I, maybe it's because she was my firstborn, we were incredibly close. And there was nothing she didn't tell me. There was nothing, she was just incredible. And the loss is indescribable, but we've got to a stage in the family now where we're talking about how she lived, not how she died. So she moves forwards with us and she's always around us.
Well, I mean, that's an amazing perspective to have, and, your bravery shines through just by being here today, but also by that answer. I wanted to ask just quickly about a different topic, if I could, which is the early release scheme that's taking place at the moment. Obviously, Libby's killer doesn't fall under this, being in jail for murder and rape, but it does happen with people of some sexual offences. Yeah. Clearly, the government inherited an extraordinary backlog and a prison system under huge pressure, but How does it make you feel when you do see some of these early releases that take place?
It makes me angry, and it makes me really sad for the family, for the victim and the victims' families. I have a massive issue with the justice system myself. You know, I think we need to have a complete reform of it. There are people in prisons that don't need to be in prisons. They can be punished in other ways. But people who, you know, commit sexual offences, who hurt people that didn't ought to be on the streets. So releasing somebody when they've had a sentence, and the sentences aren't long enough. I mean, in our case, he got life with a minimum of 27 years. He was 24 when he killed Libby. He'll be in his early 50s when he gets out. That's not a sentence. The life sentence is what myself and my husband and then my children have, and then their children. You know, we have the life sentence. So I think there needs to be a whole new look at sentencing. I mean, I would have everybody who takes a life in prison for the rest of theirs. And if you commit an offence where you hurt somebody, or, you know, a sexual offence, or, you know, or anything like that, you need to be in prison for a very long time, not a 20-year sentence, but you'll only serve 10, or you may only serve 8 now. You know, it's not okay.
Clearly, there's a lot that the government is announcing this week, today, and we've talked about that and the way that you embrace that. Stepping aside from those specifics, though, is there a sense we're actually getting softer? Maybe because of unbelievable pressures, whether it's the prison system or the judiciary. But do you feel like the general direction of travel is in the right direction or not?
I think we are getting softer on sentencing, and I think we need to pull it right back in and go hard. You know, because if people think, well, I'm only going, if people are compelled to do these things and know they're only going to get 18 months inside, it's no deterrent. You know, we need a robust deterrent, and that to me is, you know, a long time in prison. And also, and alongside that, you know, treatment services, help, you know, rehabilitation services, which I don't think happen inside now.
It's going to be Libby's birthday soon.
It is, yeah.
New Year's Day?
New Year's Day, yes.
How are you going to be marking it?
Well, in the years gone by, we've gone up to Libby's bench up on the hill, and we've had sort of friends and family join us there. I'm not too sure I want to do that this year. I found this year really difficult. It was nearly 7 years, and I found this year really difficult. So I'm kind of thinking I might put a little post out to our friends and ask them to send me a message with a memory or a picture of her, just so I can have a bit more of Libby back in my life. But we'll just have a Libby day, and we'll probably watch her favourite movie. And sadly, we'll have to drink Lambrini because that's what she liked. I'm hoping by 28 she'd have moved over to sort of at least Prosecco by now. Yeah, and we'll have to eat red velvet cake because that was her favourite cake.
What's her favourite movie?
Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes,
Wonderful.
That was her favourite. So we'll just go through the list of other films she liked, and anything that the other three want to do, you know, Libby related, we'll do for the day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Lizzy, Lisa Squire, remarkable, a remarkable lady, unbelievably strong. We are going to be speaking to the Children's Commissioner about this topic up next, so don't go anywhere. The school holidays are, of course, just around the corner, and that means, if they haven't started already, and that means children are going to be spending a lot more time at home, and let's face it, probably online.
A lot of parents worry about what their kids get up to on social media, but can find it quite difficult to have those conversations.
Well, the Children's Commissioner has brought out a new guide full of tips to help make those conversations a little bit easier. And Dame Rachel D'Souza joins us now. A very good morning to you.
Morning.
Good to see you. So is this a simple thing to help on? Or?
No, it's really tricky, and it's tricky for both sides, and that's why we did that. We created this guide. Now, this guide has been created by hundreds and hundreds of young people and teens. What they wish their parents knew, how they want their parents to talk to them, the guidelines they want their parents to give them. So basically, they started by telling me, the young people, what their lives are like online. And it's bleak, you know. Partly their online life and their offline life are the same for children. They love both of them, but all of them had seen terrible things, pornography, violence, gore. Most of them thought it was fairly normal to see it. Not one of them said they'd tell their parents. And when I said, why wouldn't you tell your parents? They said, basically, partly because they just see it as normal, but partly because they thought their parents would overreact, confiscate their phones. They did say they think their parents are really gullible and don't know about the online world. So in our guide, we've put, because over the last 4 years since I did the first one of these, things have changed so much. So we've put in all the apps they tell us they're using, the AI functions they're using. So there's some really practical advice. But they also really talked about what they want their parents to do, and it might shock you.
Well, go on then. What is it then?
Okay, so
shocked.
Yeah, so they were. We want our parents to give us some rules. So they were very much like, and I made them write the rules. They're in the guide. The things that would help them. No phones in bed at night. Screen time. Do you know that 25% of 8-year-olds are spending more than 4 hours on screens? Most kids spending at least 2 hours, and they're like, we cannot control ourselves. So we actually do need our parents to help us. But the interesting thing, so they said, sort out guidelines with us, tell us what we can and can't go on. But particularly the teens were, if they just say, you're banned, we will do everything we can to go round and do it. But if our parents collaborate with us and come up with the rules together, we'll try and stick to them. Yeah, I thought that was powerful.
I just going to say the thing that jumps out most to me there is that kids know this is a problem.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
almost, you know, whereas sweets, you'd just be like, whatever, give me more growing up. You know, I'm trying to think of the comparison. It's almost like there's a glimmer of hope there.
You see, I think there is. And when I ask them, one of the questions I ask them is, what will you do when you're a parent? The answers are so instructive. It's like, they'll have a book. You know, we're going to talk together. They're very sensitive about the fact that parents are on the phone when they're having dinner. Oh, yeah. And things like that.
It's very true.
And look, I'm not blaming, because I'm a mum of a 30-year-old, and he says to me, Mum, you did that when when you were a busy head teacher, you were on the phone. So it's not about blaming, but we really, really need to think about this, because kids will do as you do, not as you say.
Yeah, you haven't really got a leg to stand on as well for saying, you get off your phone, but I'm going to keep on mine. It's fair. I'm interested in your view on the government's violence against women and girls strategy, because they've obviously brought in these new move to try and teach misogyny more, for teachers to be able to refer people that they're worried about to sort of specialists. Are you happy with that? Do you think they need to go further?
So there are some really good things. Like, one of the things that's not been talked about much is the new child houses. And I've been a really great advocate of this, where you actually, when there has been an incident, you have police, health and others working together, putting the therapeutic support in. I mean, everywhere there's been a grooming gang should have one of these, because it would stop it happening. You would have the intelligence straight away and the support for the children. So I think there's some good things that like that. In terms of the education piece, look, I've argued for far better relationships and sex education and education about these things. And again, I've surveyed 1 million children, and they tell me their teaching in this area at school is terrible. It's often done by a non-specialist, and, you know, boys are, but we have to be careful, because boys will say to me, I have had, 52 lessons on consent and not one lesson on how do I build a relationship and what my adult life looked like. And so actually the young people want good teaching in this area, but we have to be really careful about not demonising boys. Boys are great. You just need to work with them properly, and you know they're not going to necessarily sit and emote. You know, and they do need, you know, they do need we need male role models. We need good male teachers being able to teach some of this stuff. Let's not make out they're all, you know, got ADHD and they're all sex pests and they're all whatever. It's terrible. You know, we need to be positive.
No, I think it's really, really interesting perspective. I think the other area worth touching on is bringing it back to the online world, which clearly has a massive impact on why this is a bigger issue to confront today. I'm interested how closely you're watching the Australia ban for social media under 16s. But particularly in light of what you just said at the top about parents, you know, if kids are saying, if they tell us no, we'll find a way around it. Just where do you stand on what's gone on in Australia?
So, look, we've just brought in the Online Safety Act, and it's a controversial act, but it's come in. So what I've said is I am going to watch that like a hawk, and if in a year's time, because it's only just started, the children are not any safer, and I'm literally polling children, do you understand it? Do you feel safer? If they're not, I'll be calling for an Australian model. I am really quite inspired by the fact that they've been responsible and said under 16s should not be on these things. Where do kids see terrible violence, terrible porn? It's on X, it's on sometimes on Snapchat, sometimes on TikTok. You know, they're seeing it in the same places. So
this is important as well, because when we put this to the government, they say, oh, well, you know, they can't get on porn sites anymore, which, don't get me wrong, is like, you know, I don't want to minimise it, but they are finding this stuff on social media, right?
Well, I mean, have you ever... I mean, I've made journalists' jaws drop open by just showing them what's an X, and they don't necessarily realise it's on there. And, of course, as a kid, the algorithm sends it to you, and the children know. And like I say, 25% of 11-year-olds have seen beheadings, suicide ideation. All the kids were telling me they've seen it, and they tell me they do not tell their parents. They do not tell their parents because they don't want to worry them. They don't want to make them, you know, they don't know how to tell them. And again, in my guide, I've got some things, how to talk to a kid about this, especially if you don't really know much about it. So we've got some really helpful kind of openers. I think we're living in two different worlds. And I hear this from every child I speak to. There are some savvy parents who get it, but most parents don't even know what the kids are on. And AI is making it even more. So back to the VOG, I mean, one of the things I want to see is the banning of nudification apps, and I'm hoping we'll see that come. Biggest problem, and it's massively different to when I started 4 or 5 years ago, biggest problem teenage girls are saying, I won't even go out the door because someone will take a picture of me and put my head on a naked body, and you know, so I want the VOG strategy. Good start, let's go further.
Yeah, it's totally right. And also we talk about that with celebrities all the time, but actually, you know, it's happening to people at school, in their normal workplaces, whatever it is as well. Thank you very much indeed. Always good to talk.
Thank you.
Dame Rachel D'Souza there for us. Now, it's one of Shakespeare's most famous plays, and now Hamlet's being reimagined for the big screen.
It's going to be in UK cinemas early next year, and it's bringing a modern angle to the tragedy. Well, earlier we spoke to Riz Ahmed, who stars in the title role. He's been working on the project, he told us, for 13 years.
I made a promise to myself that I would make this film when I was in high school, when I was 17 years old. And that's because, you know, I felt very out of place as a teenager, like a lot of people, at my school, even in this country. And Shakespeare felt like everything I was on the outside of. And this incredible teacher, white Jewish guy from Wolverhampton who spoke fluent Punjabi, believe it or not, took me under his wing, gave me this play, and I related to it so much. It changed how I saw myself in relation to the culture. And I decided back then, you know, I really want to make a film of Hamlet that reimagines it. There is a version of it where everyone can relate to it, everyone can find themselves in it. And so, yeah, however many decades later, here we are.
I'm fascinated by that, because you've spoken before about, you know, like you just saying there, like how you felt at school and at university, and also in the industry, by the way, as well. I think it's fair to say as well. What was it about Hamlet that made you feel connected? Because for many people, Shakespeare, as you would say, you know, is part of the kind of elite, you know, the kind of exclusively, but it spoke to you.
Yeah, you know, I often say Shakespeare's not dead, he's just been kidnapped. You know, he's been kidnapped by the establishment, he's been kidnapped by the intellectuals, you know.
Yeah, he'd be down with everyone else, right?
Exactly.
In the masses.
Well, this is the thing.
Of the people.
He was absolutely writing in noisy, crowded theatres. He was writing for princes and paupers at the same time. And for me, I think the reason why Hamlet is such an enduring story, it's actually never stopped being performed somewhere in the world since it was written 500 years ago, because it's a universal story. It's about family, betrayal, loyalty, duty, honour. So many things that people can find themselves in, but often the way it's performed is like an intellectual exercise, a poetry recital. But as you saw from our trailer, we wanted to make something that people feel first and foremost. We wanted to make something that's just very visceral and immediate and feels really, really contemporary.
I'm really interested in your take on AI for your industry as a whole. I mean, I have to say, listening to you talk just about this project, and we had another couple of great guests on this topic in the last week or so, it feels impossible to fake the passion, the depth, the kind of the story arc that you're clearly capturing in this film. Are you relaxed about the threat of AI or worried about it? How do you feel people are?
No, I don't think you can be relaxed about something that's going to change our lives so dramatically. But I do think that, in a way, AI can't do creativity. I think AI can make things, it can make finished products, but without friction, without struggle to get there, things don't have meaning. A frictionless life is a meaningless life. If I'd whipped up this film in like 15 seconds, I wouldn't be here talking to you about it this passionately. It's because it's taken me 13 years, because it's been with me since I was a teenager. That is what gives things their meaning. Life only has meaning if you have struggle. And me sweating to make something imperfect, I hope, will connect more with audiences than me, you know, pressing a button and coming up with a really shiny finished product. So I'm worried about the jobs. I'm worried about, you know, how people will be affected. But in a way, I think it's going to make us double down on what creativity really is. And it's about sharing your journey and sharing a part of yourself.
I think that's totally right. The human struggle thing, that is the thing that cannot be replicated. It's the same with sport. It's the same with all these great artists who, you know, lived on the edge, you know, Keats, Shakespeare, or, you can name any of them. But it's from that human suffering almost that creativity comes.
Yeah, and I think that's actually what makes this film, hopefully, but also the play of Hamlet, so relatable. It is about the struggle to be human. In fact, the most famous speech in the English language, you know, you saw a clip of it there, "To be or not to be," that's actually all about human struggle. It's often performed as though it's about giving up. You know, should I just give up? Should I end it all? But actually, if you read the play, it's about resistance. It's about pushing back against injustice. It's all about the things that make life difficult, but then in turn give them meaning.
That was Riz Ahmed with us earlier on the programme. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was great. Fascinating chat. I agree with him so much on Shakespeare. And if he was alive today, he wouldn't be writing for the intellectuals and the elites. He'd be writing for, you know, the people.
Well, when he was saying this for Shakespeare, for this sort of unintroduced, I was thinking, I'll tune in there.
I love it.
Great, nice modern take on it. Now, US President Donald Trump addressed the nation and looked back at his year in office since stepping down in the White House last January. It follows voter backlash on the economy and the things that have dragged down President Trump's approval rating. A bit of build-up because this was an address to the nation, a big build-up. People thought there was going to be a sort of really big announcement, but instead it kind of just turned out to be him talking about his own achievements. Here's a taste.
We are making America great again. Tonight, after 11 months, our border is secure. Inflation is stopped. Wages are up. Prices are down. Our nation is strong. America is respected. And our country is back, stronger than ever before. We're poised for an economic boom, the likes of which the world has never seen. Soon we will host the World Cup and the Olympics, both of which I got. But most importantly, we will celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. There could be no more fitting tribute to this epic milestone than to complete the comeback of America that began just 1 year ago. When the world looks at us next year, let them see a nation that is loyal to its citizens, faithful to its workers, confident to its identity, certain to its destiny, and the envy of the entire globe. We are respected again like we have never been respected before.
President Trump there last night. Well, not long left on our final programme of the year, and we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we have a very Christmassy finish to the programme. We'll be listening to a couple of Christmas carols.
Great.
From the Buryland Bells in southwest London. We'll be right back with a little bit more of this.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it. As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Traveling is not just about the destination. It's also about how you get there. Fly Emirates, fly better. Fly Emirates, fly better. Thank you.
Now it's our final show together until after Christmas, which is a bit sad. But we're going to have, we're going to be presenting a little bit more separately over the festive period. But
well, Sky News will still be on throughout the Christmas period, so don't tune out. But spreading ourselves out a little bit.
And we wanted to end with something a bit Christmassy. Southwest London, the Buryland Bells Choir. Wilf loves a carol.
I love a carol. It's important I'm not singing it, so let's listen in to the Buryland Bells and a very Merry Christmas to one and all.
Is the happiest season of all.
best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.